George Thomas, a human soldier, never imagined he'd adopt an alien baby, let alone one that would turn out to be the prince of a galactic empire. The chaos of battle engulfs him as he pursues enemy Nigean forces across the war-torn landscape of planet Nigia. Plasma bolts sizzle past his head, leaving scorch marks on crumbling buildings. His boots crunch on debris-strewn streets as he ducks behind a twisted metal barrier. Heart pounding, George spots a group of Nigean soldiers retreating into a hidden bunker. He signals his squad and charges forward, determined to root out the enemy. The bunker's reinforced door groans as George and his team breach it. They descend into darkness, weapons at the ready. As they push deeper into the complex, the sounds of battle fade. An eerie silence falls, broken only by their cautious footsteps. George's enhanced hearing picks up a faint sound, a weak, raspy breath. He motions for his team to halt and edges forward alone. In a dimly lit chamber, George discovers a sight that stops him in his tracks. A critically wounded Nigean female lies on the floor, cradling an infant in her arms. Her violet skin is pale, marred by severe injuries. Despite the dire situation, her eyes lock onto George with fierce intensity. "Human," she rasps, her voice barely audible. "I am Arya, High Counselor of Nigia. This child is of vital importance to our people. You must protect him." George hesitates, his training warring with his conscience. The infant squirms, letting out a soft cry. Arya's eyes plead with him, transcending the barriers of species and conflict. "Why should I trust you?" George demands, his finger tense on the trigger. Arya coughs, violet blood staining her lips. "Because the fate of both our peoples may depend on it. This child is more than he seems." The bunker shudders, dust raining down from the ceiling. George's calm crackles with urgent reports of Nigean reinforcements. He has seconds to decide. With a curse, George slings his rifle and reaches for the infant. Arya releases the child, her strength fading. "His name is Zephyr," she whispers. "Keep him safe." As George cradles the alien baby, Arya's eyes close for the final time. The bunker groans ominously. George sprints for the exit, shouting orders to his squad. They emerge into chaos, Nigean forces converging on their position. In the frantic evacuation to the human base, George shields the infant with his body. Zephyr remains eerily calm, his large eyes taking in the madness around them. At the base, George faces immediate skepticism and hostility. His superior officer, Colonel Hawkins, glares at the alien child. "Have you lost your mind, Thomas?" Hawkins bellows. "That's an enemy alien." George stands his ground, Zephyr secure in his arms. "Sir, this child was entrusted to me by a dying Nigean official. She claimed he's of vital importance. This could be a game changer." As arguments erupt around him, George realizes his life has irrevocably changed. He's now responsible for this alien infant, a decision that will ripple across the galaxy. Unknown to all, the child George protects is the sole heir to the Nigean Empire, a fact that will reshape the conflict between their species. News of George's actions spreads like wildfire. The Nigean Empire, desperate to reclaim their lost prince, intensifies attacks on human outposts. Earth's government debates the implications, unaware of Zephyr's true identity. George receives new orders. He's to be reassigned to a secure facility on Earth. There, he'll raise and protect Zephyr, while scientists study the child's unique biology. As he boards the transport ship, cradling the alien infant who has become his ward, George steels himself for the challenges ahead. The fate of humanity and the Nigean Empire now rests in his hands, and in the tiny, six-fingered hands of baby Zephyr. The transport ship hummed as it broke through Earth's atmosphere, carrying George and his alien ward to their new home. Zephyr, nestled in George's arms, cooed softly, seemingly unaware of the monumental changes occurring around him. As the ship touched down at a secluded landing pad nestled in the Rocky Mountains, George's eyes widened at the sight of the massive underground complex before him. A team of scientists and military personnel awaited their arrival, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a woman with sharp eyes and an air of authority, stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to Facility X, Sergeant Thomas. I'm Dr. Rodriguez, lead scientist on Project Zephyr." George nodded, instinctively tightening his hold on the infant. "It's just George now, ma'am. I'm not here as a soldier." Dr. Rodriguez's gaze softened as she observed the protective stance. "Of course, George. Let's get you both settled in." The facility buzzed with activity as George and Zephyr were led through sterile white corridors to their new living quarters. The room was sparse but comfortable, with a crib specially designed for the alien infant's unique physiology. As weeks turned into months, George found himself adapting to a routine he never could have imagined. He spent his days caring for Zephyr, who grew at an astonishing rate. Within months, the infant had reached the size and cognitive abilities of a human toddler. Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked tirelessly, studying Zephyr's biology. George watched as they marveled at the child's extraordinary regenerative abilities and advanced immune system. "His cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Rodriguez explained during one of their daily briefings. "The potential medical applications for humanity are staggering." George nodded, only half listening as he watched Zephyr stack blocks with his six-fingered hands. The child's large, violet eyes sparkled with intelligence as he constructed intricate towers. "Zeph, careful," George cautioned as the tower wobbled. Zephyr chirped in response, a sound George had come to recognize as acknowledgement. As George taught Zephyr basic human customs and language, he found himself learning just as much from the alien child. He began to interpret Zephyr's unique vocalizations and gestures, forming a bond that transcended species. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Nigean Empire reeled from the loss of their heir. In the opulent throne room of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zach Thor's rage echoed off the crystalline walls. "Incompetence!" he roared, his violet skin darkening with fury. "How could you let the humans take my son?" General Krovac, a battle-hardened warrior, bowed low before his emperor. "Your Majesty, we are doing everything in our power to locate the prince. I've already ordered increased attacks on human colonies." Zach Thor's eyes narrowed. "Not enough. I want every human world to feel our wrath until they return my heir. Unleash the full might of our fleet." As the Nigerian military mobilized for all-out war, Earth's government found itself facing an unprecedented crisis. In a secure bunker beneath Washington, D.C., Admiral James Harrison addressed a room full of grim-faced officials. "The Nigerians have intensified their attacks," he reported, gesturing to a holographic map dotted with red conflict zones. "We've lost 3 colonies in the past week alone." A murmur of dismay rippled through the room. Harrison continued, "I propose we use the alien child as a bargaining chip. If we return him to the Nigerians, we might be able to negotiate peace." The suggestion was met with immediate uproar. "Absolutely not," shouted a senior diplomat. "That would be admitting guilt. It could make things even worse." As debates raged on Earth, the Nigerian Empire set in motion a plan of its own. In a shadowy chamber deep within the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zach Thor addressed an elite group of operatives. "Shadow Blades," he intoned, his voice low and menacing. "You are the finest covert operatives in the Empire. Your mission is to infiltrate human space and locate my son." Commander Syra, the only female among the group, stepped forward. Her live form belied her deadly skills. We will not fail you, Your Majesty. As the Shadow Blades began their covert mission, a new player entered the complex game of galactic politics. On a distant world of shimmering crystal spires, the galactic conclave convened. Counselor Xandor, a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid form, addressed his peers. The conflict between humans and Nigeans threatens the stability of our galaxy. We must intervene before it's too late. Back on Earth, George remained blissfully unaware of the galactic storm brewing around him and Zephyr. As he played with the child in their room, he noticed something strange. Zephyr reached for a toy just out of his grasp, and for a moment, George could have sworn the object moved on its own. He blinked, unsure if he had imagined it. But as he watched Zephyr more closely, he began to notice other odd occurrences. Objects slightly out of place, lights flickering when the child was upset. "Dr. Rodriguez," George called out, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I think you need to see this." As the doctor hurried into the room, George realized that his journey with Zephyr was just getting started. New challenges and revelations awaited, with the fate of galaxies hanging in the balance. As George watched Zephyr manipulate objects with his mind, a mix of awe and concern washed over him. He had suspected the child possessed extraordinary abilities, but this telekinetic display confirmed it beyond doubt. Dr. Rodriguez burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "What is it, George? What did you see?" Before George could respond, Zephyr let out a delighted giggle and levitated a set of building blocks, arranging them into a perfect pyramid in midair. The doctor's jaw dropped, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "Incredible," she breathed, pulling out a tablet to record her observations. "Zephyr's abilities are far beyond what we initially theorized." George nodded, his protective instincts kicking in. "What does this mean for him, Doc? For us?" Dr. Rodriguez's expression turned serious. "It means we need to accelerate our research. If Zephyr can do this now, who knows what he'll be capable of as he continues to grow." As if on cue, Zephyr's body shimmered with a faint violet glow. George and Dr. Rodriguez watched in astonishment as the child's form seemed to stretch and expand before their eyes. In a matter of minutes, Zephyr had grown several inches, his features maturing to resemble those of a human 5-year-old. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Rodriguez muttered, furiously tapping notes into her tablet. "His growth rate has increased exponentially. We need to run a full battery of tests immediately." George placed a gentle hand on Zephyr's shoulder, feeling the child tense under his touch. "Easy there, document. Let's not overwhelm him. Zeph, how are you feeling, buddy?" Zephyr turned his large, violet eyes to George, a look of confusion and wonder on his face. "I feel different," he said, his voice clearer and more articulate than ever before. "Everything seems sharper, brighter, and I understand things I didn't before." As Dr. Rodriguez prepared to take Zephyr for examinations, alarms blared throughout the facility. Major Marcus Steele's voice crackled over the intercom system. "Attention all personnel. This is a security alert. We have detected unauthorized access to our perimeter sensors. All non-essential staff, please report to your designated safe zones. Security teams, mobilize immediately." George's military training kicked in. He scooped up Zephyr, ignoring the child's protest that he could walk on his own. "Doc, we need to get Zephyr to a secure location. Now." They rushed through the corridors, passing scientists and security personnel hurrying to their stations. As they approached the high-security wing, they encountered Major Steele and his team setting up defensive positions. "Sergeant Thomas," Steele barked, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Zephyr. "Is this the package we're protecting?" George nodded, his arms tightening around Zephyr. "Yes. Sir, where do you want us?" Steele pointed to a reinforced door at the end of the hallway. Panic room. It's got the highest level of security in the facility. Dr. Rodriguez, you go with them. We'll handle things out here. As they entered the panic room, the heavy doors sealing behind them with a pneumatic hiss, George couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Outside, the Shadow Blades team led by Commander Syra had breached the facility's outer defenses, their advanced Nigean technology allowing them to slip past most of the human security measures. Syra's voice was a low whisper as she addressed her team. Remember, our priority is locating and extracting the prince. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. Back in the panic room, Zephyr's eyes darted around the small space, taking in every detail. He walked to a computer terminal, his six-fingered hands hovering over the keyboard. "George," he said, his voice carrying an eerie calm, "I think I can help." Before George or Dr. Rodriguez could stop him, Zephyr placed his hands on the terminal. The screen flickered, lines of code scrolling faster than the human eye could follow. Suddenly, the facility's security feed appeared, showing the Shadow Blade's progress through the complex. "How did you do that?" Dr. Rodriguez gasped, staring at Zephyr in disbelief. Zephyr turned to them, his violet eyes glowing faintly. I'm not sure. It's like the knowledge was always there, just waiting for me to access it." George knelt beside Zephyr, his face a mask of concern. "Zeph, do you know who those people are? The ones trying to break in?" Zephyr's brow furrowed in concentration. I think they're my people. Nigeans. But I don't understand why they're here." As the gravity of the situation settled over them, a new alert flashed on the screen. A massive ship had entered Earth's orbit, its design unlike anything in the human or Nigean fleets. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened in recognition. "That's a galactic conclave vessel. What are they doing here?" Outside the facility, Counselor Xandor's diplomatic team prepared to make contact with Earth's leaders, unaware of the drama unfolding in the Rocky Mountains. As the various factions converged on the secret base, George realized that keeping Zephyr safe was about to become infinitely more complicated. The young Nigean prince placed a hand on George's arm, his touch surprisingly warm. "Don't worry, George. I won't let anyone take me away from you. We're family now." George managed a small smile, but his eyes remained fixed on the security feed, watching as the Shadow Blades drew ever closer to their location. He knew that the next few hours would determine not just Zephyr's fate, but potentially the future of human-Nigean relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. As if sensing the tension in the room, Zephyr's body began to emit a soft, pulsating glow. George and Dr. Rodriguez exchanged worried glances, both wondering what new ability the young prince might manifest next, and how it would impact the rapidly escalating situation. As the glow around Zephyr intensified, George reached out to steady the young prince. Suddenly, Zephyr's eyes rolled back and his body went rigid. A blinding flash of violet light erupted from his form, accompanied by a deafening psychic scream that reverberated through the minds of everyone in the facility. George instinctively shielded his eyes, his military training kicking in as he moved to protect Zephyr. The lights in the panic room flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Dr. Rodriguez fumbled for her tablet, but it too had gone dark. Zephyr, can you hear me?" George called out, his voice filled with concern as he cradled the now unconscious prince. As the initial shock subsided, emergency lights sputtered to life, casting an eerie red glow throughout the room. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to check Zephyr's vitals, her face a mask of concentration. "His neural activity is off the charts," she muttered, using a backup medical scanner. "It's as if his mind is suddenly connected to something vast and incomprehensible." The door to the panic room burst open, revealing Major Marcus Steele, his weapon drawn and eyes scanning for threats. "Report!" he barked, taking in the scene before him. George stood protectively in front of Zephyr, his stance challenging the Major. "Sir, Zephyr experienced some kind of psychic event. We need to ensure his safety and well-being before anything else." Steele's eyes narrowed, but as he watched George's unwavering dedication to the alien child, his expression softened slightly. "At ease, Sergeant. Let's focus on containing the situation." Outside the facility, Commander Syra froze in her tracks as the wave of psychic energy washed over her. Her violet eyes widened in recognition. "The Prince," she whispered. "He's awakening." Turning to her team, she issued rapid-fire orders in their native tongue. "Change of plans. We move now. The Prince's power signature is unmistakable. Stealth is secondary to speed. Go!" As the Shadow Blades began their covert infiltration, the galactic conclave ship hovering in Earth's orbit detected the massive energy surge. Counselor Zandor, his energy form pulsing with anticipation, turned to his communications officer. "Send an immediate message to Earth's leaders," he commanded. "Inform them that we are aware of the Nigean Prince's presence and request an emergency diplomatic meeting at the source of the energy signature." Back in the facility, systems slowly flickered back to life. Dr. Rodriguez gasped as she analyzed the incoming data on her now-functioning tablet. "This is impossible," she breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What is it, Doc?" George asked, still cradling the unconscious Zephyr. "His DNA. It's rewriting itself at an exponential rate. The psychic event seems to have triggered a massive acceleration in his development." She looked up, her face pale. "If this continues, he could reach full maturity in a matter of days." As if on cue, Zephyr's body began to change before their eyes. His limbs elongated, his features sharpened, and within minutes, he resembled a human teenager rather than the child he had been moments ago. Zephyr's eyes fluttered open, now a deeper shade of violet. He sat up, looking at his hands in wonder. "George," he said, his voice deeper and more resonant. "What's happening to me?" Before George could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Major Steele's radio crackled to life. "Sir, we've detected multiple intruders breaching the lower levels. They're using some kind of advanced stealth tech we can't fully track." Steele's face hardened. "Nigeans," he growled. Turning to George, he barked, "Sergeant, get the Prince to the deep bunker. Now!" As George helped Zephyr to his feet, the young prince swayed, overwhelmed by the flood of information coursing through his mind. "George, I remember things. About my people, about technology I've never seen. It's all so clear now." George steadied him, concern etched on his face. "We'll figure it out, Zeph. But right now, we need to move." As they made their way through the chaotic corridors, security personnel rushed past, weapons at the ready. The facility had become a battleground, with Commander Syra and her Shadow Blades methodically working their way towards their target. In Earth's orbit, Admiral James Harrison received the urgent reports, his teeth clenched as he processed the implications. "Prepare my fighter escort," he ordered. "We're heading to the Rocky Mountain facility immediately." As night fell over the mountains, George led Zephyr and Dr. Rodriguez deeper into the heart of the facility. The sounds of combat echoed in the distance, growing closer with each passing minute. Zephyr stumbled, clutching his head. "George, I can feel them. The Nigeans. They're here for me." George's grip on Zephyr's shoulder tightened. "I won't let them take you, Zeph. I promise." As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with Commander Syra and two of her Shadow Blades. The Nigean warrior's eyes locked onto Zephyr, a mix of awe and perseverance in her gaze. "My prince," she said, dropping to one knee, "we've come to bring you home." George stepped in front of Zephyr, his body tense and ready for action. The young prince placed a hand on George's shoulder, his touch calming yet filled with newfound strength. "I am not the child you remember," Zephyr said, his voice carrying an authority that belied his youthful appearance. "And this is my home now." As the two groups faced off in the narrow corridor, the facility shook with the impact of the galactic conclave ship landing nearby. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just Zephyr's fate, but the future of human-Nigean relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. George's mind raced, searching for a way to protect Zephyr while avoiding an intergalactic incident. As he opened his mouth to speak, a blinding light flooded the corridor, and a voice unlike any they had heard before resonated through the air. "People of Earth and Nigia," it proclaimed, "the galactic conclave has arrived. We must speak with the one you call Zephyr immediately." "People of Earth and Nigia," the voice proclaimed, "the galactic conclave has arrived. We must speak with the one you call Zephyr." The sudden intrusion of the conclave's message sent shockwaves through the facility. George, his military instincts kicking into overdrive, wasted no time. He grabbed Zephyr's arm and locked eyes with Dr. Rodriguez. "We need to move, now." With practiced efficiency, George led them through the chaos erupting around them. Alarms blared, their shrill wails echoing off the metal walls as security personnel rushed past, weapons at the ready. The once orderly facility had transformed into a maelstrom of activity, with shouted orders and the pounding of boots creating a cacophony of urgency. As they navigated the winding corridors, Zephyr stumbled, his newly elongated limbs still unfamiliar. George steadied him, his touch gentle but firm. "Easy, Zeph. We're almost there." Dr. Rodriguez kept pace, her tablet clutched tightly to her chest, eyes darting from side to side as she took in the unfolding chaos. "George, where exactly are we going?" "Secure bunker, deep in the mountain," George replied, his voice low and focused. "It's our best chance at keeping Zephyr safe until we figure out our next move." As they descended deeper into the facility, the sounds of combat grew more intense. The sharp crack of gunfire mixed with the distinct whine of energy weapons, painting a grim picture of the battle raging above them. Commander Syra and her Shadow Blades team had breached the lower levels, their advanced Nigean technology allowing them to slice through human defenses effortlessly. Major Marcus Steele's security forces put up a valiant fight, but they were outmatched by the Nigeans' superior combat skills and weaponry. Steele's voice crackled over the facility's comm system, strained but determined. "All personnel, fall back to defensive positions around the secure bunker. I repeat, fall back and fortify the bunker entrance." George's grip on Zephyr tightened as they rounded another corner, the bunker's reinforced door now visible at the end of the corridor. "Almost there," he muttered, more to himself than his companions. Suddenly, Zephyr gasped, his eyes flaring with an otherworldly violet light. His body went rigid, and George felt a surge of energy pulse through the air around them. The lights in the corridor flickered wildly, and the heavy door to the bunker swung open of its own accord. "Zeph?" George asked, concern etching his features. The young prince blinked, his expression a mixture of wonder and confusion. I did that. I'm not sure how, but I opened the door." Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she furiously tapped notes into her tablet. "Fascinating. It seems your psychic abilities are growing exponentially with your physical maturation." George ushered them into the bunker, sealing the door behind them with a resounding thud. The space was austere but secure, lined with banks of computers and communication equipment. A small medical bay occupied one corner, stocked with supplies for extended stays. As Zephyr settled onto a nearby chair, his body still adjusting to its rapid changes, another wave of psychic energy washed over him. His eyes rolled back, and his form began to emit a soft, pulsating glow. George moved to support him, But Dr. Rodriguez held out a hand. "Wait," she said, her voice hushed with awe. "I think he's accessing the Nigean collective consciousness. We need to let this play out." Outside the bunker, the facility had become a war zone. Commander Syra and her shadow blades methodically worked their way through the complex, their movements fluid and precise. Major Steele's forces put up a fierce resistance, but they were fighting a losing battle against the technologically superior Nigeans. In the skies above, Admiral James Harrison's squadron of fighter craft screamed into view, establishing a protective perimeter around the Rocky Mountain facility. Harrison's own craft touched down on the facility's helipad, and the Admiral strode purposefully into the chaos, barking orders. "I want this place locked down tight," he shouted to his subordinates. "No one gets in or out without my express authorization. And get me a direct line to that Conclave ship. We need to start talking before the situation spirals completely out of control." Inside the bunker, Zephyr's eyes snapped open, now a deep, swirling violet that seemed to contain entire galaxies. He turned to George, his expression one of newfound understanding and awe-inspiring power. "George," he said, his voice resonating with an authority that belied his youthful appearance, "I remember now. I know who I am, why I'm here, and what's at stake." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her scientific curiosity piqued. "What do you mean, Zephyr? What have you learned?" The young prince stood, his movements now graceful and controlled. "I am not just a prince of the Nigean Empire. I am the key to a prophecy, one that speaks of a being who will bridge the gap between our peoples and usher in a new era of galactic peace." George's brow furrowed as he processed this information. "But why were you hidden on Earth? Why all the secrecy?" Zephyr's expression darkened. "There are factions within the Nigean Empire who fear change, who would rather maintain the status quo of isolation and suspicion. They saw me as a threat to their power and sought to eliminate me before I could fulfill my destiny." As Zephyr spoke, the bunker systems began to respond to his presence. Screens flickered to life, displaying data and security feeds from throughout the facility. The young prince's consciousness seemed to extend beyond his physical form, intertwining with the very fabric of the complex's technology. Outside, the battle raged on, with Major Steele and his remaining forces establishing a final defensive perimeter around the bunker entrance. The Major himself stood at the forefront, his weapon raised and his mind focused in dogged willpower. In orbit, Emperor Zach Thor received word of the Shadow Blade's progress. His patience wearing thin, he issued a fateful command to the Nigean fleet. "Advance on Earth. We will retrieve my heir and deal with any resistance accordingly." As the various factions converged on the Rocky Mountain facility, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of human-Nigean relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. George, standing beside the rapidly maturing Zephyr, realized that his role had shifted from protector to guide. He would need to help navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics while ensuring the safety of both his adopted child and his fellow humans. The bunker hummed with energy as Zephyr's power continued to grow. The young prince turned to George, his eyes blazing with tenacity. "We need to end this conflict before it escalates further. It's time for me to face my destiny and bring our peoples together." George nodded, his hand resting on Zephyr's shoulder. "Whatever you need, Zeph, I'm with you all the way." As they prepared to step out of the bunker and into the chaos beyond, the fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with Zephyr standing at the center of the storm. As Zephyr stood resolute, his eyes blazing with newfound power and understanding, the air around them began to shimmer. George felt a sudden surge of energy, and before he could react, a translucent dome materialized around the bunker, enveloping them in a protective cocoon. "Zeph, what's happening?" George asked, his voice a mix of awe and concern. The young prince, now resembling a fully grown Nigean adult, turned to his guardian. His violet eyes swirled with galaxies of knowledge as he spoke. "I'm creating a barrier, George. We need a moment of peace to address the situation." Outside the energy field, chaos reigned. Commander Syra and her shadow blades had breached the final line of defense. Major Marcus Steele, his face streaked with sweat and grime, engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat with the Nigean operatives. His movements were a blur of tactical precision, each strike and parry buying precious seconds for whatever was unfolding within the bunker. "Hold the line!" Steele roared, his voice carrying over the din of battle. "We can't let them through." Meanwhile, high above the facility, Admiral James Harrison made a decision that would alter the course of events. His fingers flew over the communication panel of his command ship, initiating a direct link to the approaching galactic conclave vessel. "This is Admiral James Harrison of Earth. I'm requesting immediate communication with Counselor Zandor. We need to de-escalate the situation before it spirals out of control." A tense moment passed before a melodious voice responded. "Admiral Harrison, this is Counselor Zandor. We are prepared to land and engage in emergency negotiations. Your initiative is unexpected but welcome." Admiral Harrison turned to Commander Syra, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "Is this your doing?" Syra's mandibles clicked in frustration. "No, these must be radicals from within our military. They seek to derail our peace talks." Another explosion rocked the bunker, larger than before. Zephyr gasped, his concentration breaking. The suspended debris crashed to the ground, narrowly missing the gathered representatives. "We need to evacuate," Admiral Harrison commanded, taking charge of the situation. "Commander Syra, can your forces assist in securing an escape route?" Syra nodded curtly. "Agreed. We must work together if we hope to survive this." As they moved towards the bunker's exit, George supported Zephyr, who was visibly weakened from his efforts. Dr. Rodriguez hovered nearby, her tablet still monitoring the prince's vital signs. "George," she whispered, her voice tight with worry, "Zephyr's condition is critical. The stress of using his abilities in his accelerated state. His organs are starting to fail. We need to get him medical attention immediately." George looked at Zephyr, torn between the need to protect him and the knowledge that the young prince would want to help others. Before he could respond, another explosion shook the facility, and the sound of gunfire echoed from the lower levels. As they stepped into the corridor, they were met with a scene of destruction. Smoke filled the air, and sparks flew from damaged electrical systems. The path ahead was treacherous, filled with debris and unstable structures. Counselor Zandor's ethereal form shimmered as he moved to the front of the group. "I can create a safe passage through this chaos," he announced, his body emitting a soft, pulsating light. With Zandor guiding the way, Admiral Harrison coordinating with Major Steele's forces, and Commander Syra watching for threats, the group began their perilous journey through the crumbling facility. Zephyr, supported by George and monitored closely by Dr. Rodriguez, struggled to keep pace, his face pale and drawn. As they navigated the collapsing structure, the sounds of battle grew louder. Major Steele and his team were engaged in a fierce firefight with the rogue Nigean soldiers, the fate of the peace talks hanging in the balance. The group pressed on, their temporary alliance tested with each step. The future of human-Nigean relations now depended not just on the outcome of the negotiations, but on their ability to survive this unexpected attack and escape the failing facility. The next explosion sent shock waves through the corridor, causing the ceiling to buckle dangerously. George's eyes widened as he saw a large section beginning to collapse directly above Zephyr. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, wrapping his arms around the prince and pulling him clear of the falling debris. As the dust settled, George found himself cradling Zephyr's limp form. The prince's skin had taken on an ashen hue, his breathing shallow and labored. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to their side, her tablet emitting a series of urgent beeps. "His vitals are crashing," she shouted over the din of alarms and distant gunfire. "We need to get him out of here now." George locked eyes with Admiral Harrison, who nodded grimly. "Go," the Admiral ordered. "Get Prince Zephyr to safety. We'll handle the evacuation." With a pang of guilt, George realized he had to prioritize Zephyr's life over the prince's desire to help others. He hoisted Zephyr into his arms, the young Nigean's body feeling unnaturally light. "This way," Dr. Rodriguez called, gesturing towards a relatively clear path through the chaos. As George carried Zephyr towards the exit, Admiral Harrison turned to Commander Syra. "Commander, we need to work together if we're going to get everyone out alive." Syra's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Agreed, Admiral. My soldiers will assist in clearing the debris." The unlikely allies began organizing a joint human-Nigean evacuation team, directing frightened personnel towards the safest routes out of the crumbling facility. The sound of Major Steele's team engaging the rogue Nigean soldiers echoed from the lower levels, adding urgency to their efforts. Counselor Zandor glided forward, his ethereal form pulsing with energy. "I can stabilize some of the critical structural points," he announced. With a gesture, shimmering force fields sprang into existence, temporarily halting the collapse of key passageways. Outside, George emerged into the open air, Zephyr cradled in his arms. The prince's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and glazed with pain. "George," he whispered, "I can sense danger." Before George could respond, Zephyr's eyes rolled back, and he went limp once more. Dr. Rodriguez ushered them towards a hastily erected medical tent, her face tight with concern. Inside the tent, a flurry of activity erupted as human and Nigean medical personnel converged on the unconscious prince. George reluctantly stepped back, allowing the doctors to work. He watched helplessly as they connected Zephyr to a bewildering array of machines, some human, others of clearly alien design. A commotion at the tent's entrance drew George's attention. Major Steele burst in, supporting a disheveled man in a lab coat. "This is Dr. Volkov," Steele announced. "He's been studying Nigean physiology. Thought he might be able to help." Dr. Volkov stumbled forward, his eyes widening as he took in Zephyr's condition. Without a word, he joined the medical team, immediately offering insights on Nigean biology that seemed to galvanize their efforts. Outside, the evacuation continued in earnest. Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra had formed an efficient team, their past animosities set aside in the face of the crisis. As the last groups of personnel emerged from the facility, Harrison's comm unit crackled to life. "Admiral," came a strained voice, "we've discovered an antimatter bomb in the lower levels. The insurgents have activated a dead man switch. If we don't disarm it soon, the entire region could be at risk." Harrison's face hardened. He turned to Syra, who nodded grimly, having overheard the transmission. "We need to go back in," Harrison said. "I will accompany you," Syra replied. "My knowledge of Nigean technology may prove useful." As they prepared to re-enter the facility, Counselor Zandor approached. The strain of maintaining the force fields was evident in the flickering of his form. "My ship's power core can reinforce the structural integrity of the facility," he said. "But doing so will leave us stranded here on Earth." Harrison nodded solemnly, recognizing the magnitude of Zandor's offer. "We appreciate your sacrifice, Counselor." With a gesture from Zandor, a wave of energy pulsed from his ship, enveloping the facility in a shimmering field. The groaning of stressed metal subsided, but the counselor's form dimmed noticeably. Inside the medical tent, Dr. Rodriguez gasped as Zephyr's neural activity spiked suddenly. The prince's eyes snapped open, glowing with an eerie light. "The bomb!" he rasped, his voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "I can sense it. Feel its location." George leaned in close, grasping Zephyr's hand. "Where is it, Zeph? Can you tell us?" Zephyr's eyes locked onto George's, and in that moment, a flood of information passed between them. George stumbled back, his heart pounding from the telepathic download. Without hesitation, he rushed out of the tent, nearly colliding with Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra as they prepared to enter the facility. "I know where the bomb is," George panted. "Zephyr, he showed me." Harrison's eyebrows shot up, but he quickly composed himself. "Lead the way," he ordered, as they raced back into the crumbling structure. Guided by Zephyr's telepathic knowledge, the full weight of their mission pressed down upon them. The fate of not just the facility, but potentially the entire region and the future of human-Nigean relations rested on their ability to disarm the antimatter bomb in time. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly before them, each step bringing them closer to either salvation or annihilation. The distant sounds of combat echoed through the halls as Major Steele's team continued to engage the Nigean insurgents, buying precious time for the bomb disposal effort. As they descended deeper into the facility's bowels, the air grew thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning circuitry. George's mind raced, filled with the alien knowledge Zephyr had imparted. He could almost see the bomb's location, a pulsing point of light in his mind's eye. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a heavily reinforced door. Beyond it lay their objective and the key to averting catastrophe. Catastrophe! George's hand trembled as he reached for the door's control panel, the alien knowledge from Zephyr guiding his movements. "Wait," Commander Syra said, her mandibles clicking nervously. "That door is reinforced with Nigean alloys. A human access code won't work." Admiral Harrison nodded grimly. "Then we'll need to work together. Syra, input your Nigean override. George, use the knowledge Zephyr gave you to bypass the final security measures." As Syra's clawed fingers danced across the alien interface, George closed his eyes, focusing on the flood of information in his mind. His hand moved almost of its own accord, inputting a complex series of commands. The door hissed open, revealing a room bathed in an eerie blue glow. In the center stood the antimatter bomb, its sleek design a stark contrast to the destruction surrounding it. Admiral Harrison's eyes widened as he took in the device's complexity. "This is far more advanced than anything we've encountered before," he muttered, examining the intricate network of wires and pulsing energy conduits. Commander Syra stepped forward, her compound eyes scanning the bomb surface. "I recognize some of the components, but others are completely foreign. We'll need to combine our knowledge to have any chance of disarming it." As they worked feverishly to understand the bomb's mechanisms, the facility groaned around them. Dust rained down from the ceiling, a stark reminder of the precarious situation above. Meanwhile, on the surface, the medical tent was a flurry of activity. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov huddled over Zephyr's unconscious form, their faces etched with concentration. "His neural patterns are unlike anything I've ever seen," Dr. Volkov muttered, adjusting a series of alien medical devices. "It's as if his mind is operating on multiple planes of existence simultaneously." Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her eyes fixed on a holographic display of Zephyr's brain activity. "We need to stabilize his higher cognitive functions without disrupting the link to the Nigean collective consciousness. It's a delicate balance." George paced anxiously nearby, his gaze darting between Zephyr and the unstable facility behind them. The shimmering force fields generated by Counselor Zandor's ship were beginning to flicker, sections of the building collapsing as the energy waned. Zandor himself materialized next to George, his ethereal form noticeably dimmer than before. "The power from my ship is nearly depleted," he said, his voice strained. "I fear I cannot maintain the fields much longer." Before George could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the evacuation zone. Major Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. Incoming aircraft. Unknown origin. All eyes turned to the sky as a sleek, alien shuttle descended through the clouds. Its design was unmistakably Nigean, but far more ornate than anything they had seen before. "It's the Emperor," Xandor gasped, his form flickering with surprise. "Emperor Zach Thor himself has come to Earth." Major Steele's team scrambled to form a defensive perimeter around the medical tent, their weapons trained on the approaching shuttle. The Major himself stood at the forefront, his face a mask of tenacity as he weighed his options. As the shuttle touched down, its ramp extending to the ground, Major Steele made his decision. He lowered his weapon and stepped forward, gesturing for his team to stand down. "We're here to help," he called out, his voice carrying across the tense silence. "If you've come in peace, we welcome your assistance." The shuttle's door slid open, revealing the imposing figure of Emperor Zach Thor. The Nigean ruler's exoskeleton gleamed with an iridescent sheen, his multiple eyes taking in the scene before him with an inscrutable gaze. "I have come for my son," Zach Thor's voice boomed, a combination of vocalized sound and telepathic projection, "and to put an end to this senseless conflict." As the Emperor strode towards the medical tent, the ground beneath their feet trembled. A series of explosions echoed from deep within the facility, followed by the ominous sound of metal twisting and concrete crumbling. Inside the bomb chamber, Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra worked with frantic precision. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, human and Nigean technologies merging as they raced against time. "We're close," Syra clicked, her mandibles twitching with nervous energy. "Just a few more connections to sever." Harrison nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he carefully manipulated a cluster of pulsing energy conduits. "Steady now," he murmured. "One wrong move and dash." His words were cut off by a violent tremor that shook the room. A section of the ceiling collapsed mere feet away, showering them with debris. As the dust settled, they saw that their exit had been completely blocked. "We're trapped," Harrison said, his voice tight with tension. "But we can't stop now. The fate of both our species depends on disarming this bomb." With renewed drive, they turned back to their task, the ticking of the bomb's countdown serving as a grim reminder of the stakes at hand. Outside, Emperor Zach Thor had reached the medical tent. He loomed over Zephyr's unconscious form, his complex eyes scanning the array of human and Nigean medical equipment. "What have you done to my son?" he demanded, his telepathic voice reverberating through the minds of all present. Dr. Volkov stepped forward, his voice steady despite his obvious awe. "Your Highness, we're doing everything in our power to stabilize Prince Zephyr's condition. His unique physiology and the stress of recent events have put him in a precarious state." The Emperor's gaze softened as he looked down at Zephyr. He placed a multi-jointed hand on his son's forehead, closing his eyes in concentration. "I sense his mind," Zach Thor said softly. "He is connected to our people in ways I never thought possible. Through him, I can feel the pain and confusion that led to this conflict." As the Emperor communed with his son, the ground shook once more. The force fields flickered and died, leaving the facility fully exposed to the forces of gravity and structural stress. Major Steele's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "We need to evacuate now. The whole place is coming down." George looked from Zephyr to the crumbling facility, torn between his duty to his friend and the knowledge that Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra were still inside, working to save them all. As debris rained down around them and the earth itself seemed to tremble, the various factions faced a crucial moment. Their actions in the next few minutes would determine not just their own survival, but the future of human-Nigean relations and the fate of two worlds. Worlds. The tension in the air was palpable as the facility, continued to crumble around them. Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra worked feverishly on the antimatter bomb, their hands moving in perfect synchronization. The alien device pulsed with an ominous blue light, its countdown ticking away the seconds until catastrophe. Almost there, Syra clicked, her mandibles twitching nervously as she manipulated a series of intricate wires. Just one more connection to sever. Harrison nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he carefully adjusted a cluster of energy conduits. "Steady now," he murmured, his voice tense with concentration. With a final, delicate movement, they disconnected the last power source. The bomb's eerie glow faded, and its ominous hum fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was their own heavy breathing. "We did it," Harrison exhaled, allowing himself a brief smile of relief. Their victory was short-lived, however, as another violent tremor shook the room. Chunks of ceiling crashed down around them, filling the air with choking dust. "We need to move," Syra urged, her compound eyes scanning the unstable structure. "This place won't hold much longer." They scrambled towards the exit, only to find their path blocked by a mountain of debris. Harrison's eyes sharp as he surveyed the obstacle. "We'll have to find another way out." As they navigated the treacherous corridors, the facility groaned and shifted around them. They ducked under falling beams and leapt over widening cracks in the floor, their newfound trust in each other put to the test with each perilous step. On the surface, the makeshift medical tent was a hive of frantic activity. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov worked tirelessly over Zephyr's unconscious form, their faces etched with concentration as they monitored an array of alien and human medical devices. "His neural patterns are stabilizing," Dr. Volkov announced, his eyes fixed on a holographic display of the prince's brain activity. "But there's something else. Something I've never seen before." Dr. Rodriguez leaned in, her brow furrowed as she studied the readouts. "It's as if he's connected to something far beyond this room. Could it be the Nigean collective consciousness?" Before they could explore this revelation further, a commotion outside the tent drew their attention. Major Steele's voice cut through the chaos. "Emperor incoming. Maintain defensive positions, but hold your fire." The sleek Nigean shuttle touched down amid swirling dust and debris. As the ramp lowered, Emperor Zach Thor emerged, his imposing figure casting a long shadow across the ravaged landscape. Major Steele approached cautiously, his weapon lowered but ready. "Your Highness," Steele called out, his voice steady despite the tension. "We welcome your assistance in this crisis." The Emperor's multiple eyes scanned the scene before settling on the medical tent. "Take me to my son," he commanded, his telepathic voice resonating through the minds of all present. As they made their way to Zephyr, George noticed subtle changes in his friend's appearance. The accelerated aging that had plagued the prince began to reverse, his features slowly returning to those of a young adult. "Dr. Rodriguez," George called out, his voice tinged with a mix of hope and concern. "Look at Zephyr's face." The medical team gathered around, marveling at the unexpected development. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened as he studied the readouts. His connection to the collective consciousness. It must be having some regenerative effect. Their observations were interrupted by the ground-shaking arrival of Admiral Harrison and Commander Syra, who burst from the facility's entrance in a cloud of dust and debris. They stumbled towards a gathered group, their uniforms torn and covered in grime. Harrison's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. The Emperor's presence, the deteriorating facility, and the tense standoff between human and Nigean forces. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "Emperor Zach Thor," he began, bowing slightly. "His vital signs are deteriorating. We need to abort." "No!" Zephyr rasped, gripping George's arm. "We're so close. I can do this." George looked into his son's eyes, seeing the purpose there. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Not alone, you won't. Ignoring the protests of the medical team, George placed his hands on Zephyr's shoulders and closed his eyes. He focused on their bond, on the years they had spent together, on the love he felt for his adopted son. A warmth spread through his body, and suddenly he could feel the vast energies Zephyr was struggling to control. "Incredible," Dr. Rodriguez whispered, watching the reading spike. "The human emotional connection is stabilizing the energy flow. It's amplifying the effect exponentially." As George and Zephyr worked in tandem, the stabilization field began to strengthen, its influence spreading further across the Rocky Mountain region. Meanwhile, in the artifact cavern, Major Steele and his team faced a terrifying new development. The gravitational anomalies intensified without warning, warping the very air around them. "We're losing ground," Steele shouted into his comm, watching as one of his soldiers was lifted off his feet, struggling against an invisible force. "The equipment can't withstand this pressure." Thinking quickly, Steele spotted a Nigean device at the edge of the cavern. "Jenkins, get me that anti-grav unit." As Jenkins fought his way to the device, Steele began unspooling climbing ropes from his pack. With precise movements, he attached the anti-grav unit to the rope system, creating a web of counterbalance forces throughout the cavern. "Everyone, hook into the lines," Steele ordered. His team moved with practiced efficiency, securing themselves to the improvised system. As the last soldier clicked in, the gravitational forces reached their peak. The team found themselves suspended in a delicate balance, able to move and work despite the crushing pressures around them. "Steele to command," the major reported, his voice strained. "We've stabilized our position. Continuing mission." Back at the main facility, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov huddled over their workstations, their fingers flying across holographic interfaces as they analyzed the artifact's energy pulses. "Alexei, look at this pattern," Elena said, highlighting a recurring sequence. "It's not just random noise. There's a structure to it." Volkov's eyes widened as he recognized the implications. "It's an activation sequence. Elena, I think we've just stumbled onto something much bigger than we realized." As they delved deeper into the data, the truth began to emerge. The artifacts weren't just ancient relics. They were part of a planetary defense system designed to protect Earth from cosmic threats. "Admiral Harrison," Elena called out, her voice urgent. "We've made a breakthrough, but it complicates things. These artifacts are more than we thought. If we don't handle this correctly, we could trigger a catastrophic event." In orbit, Emperor Zach Thor faced a critical decision. Warning lights flashed across the Stellar Wisdom's bridge as systems approached failure. "Your Highness," Chief Engineer Crowton reported, "we can't maintain this output. We need to power down or risk losing the ship entirely." Zach Thor's multifaceted eyes narrowed as he considered their options. In a moment of clarity, he made a choice that would reshape the balance of power in the solar system. "Begin evacuation procedures," he ordered. "Transfer all key personnel and critical technology to Earth's orbital stations." As Nigean shuttles streaked towards Earth's orbiting platforms, a new group of experts arrived at the ground facility. Dr. Samantha Campbell, leading a team of quantum physicists, strode purposefully towards Admiral Harrison. "Admiral," she said, her eyes bright with purpose, "we're here to help. I think we can bridge the gap between our understanding of quantum mechanics and the Nigean psychic technology." Harrison nodded gratefully. "Get to work with the Nigean scientists. We need every edge we can get." As the combined teams worked feverishly to stabilize the situation, a new alarm blared through the facility. Counselor Zandor materialized beside Harrison, his ethereal form flickering with urgency. "Admiral, we have a new problem," the Nigean counselor reported. "The artifact's energy emissions have created a spatial distortion. It's pulling debris from orbit towards us. Harrison's face hardened as he processed this new threat. Contact all space agencies and remaining Nigerian ships. We need to implement orbital defense measures immediately. As the crisis deepened, Xandor's eyes suddenly lit up with realization. I may have a solution, he said. The Conclave archives speak of a reset protocol for ancient defense systems. If we combine Nigerian psychic projection with your EMP technology, we might be able to create a pulse that could shut down the artifacts. Harrison nodded, hope kindling in his eyes. Let's do it, Major Steele, he called into his comm. Prepare to receive EMP devices. We're going to need precise placement in the artifact cavern. As the teams mobilized to implement this desperate plan, George noticed Zephyr's condition worsening. The young prince's skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality, and his breathing was shallow. We're losing him, George said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at the medical team, then back at his son. Hook me in. Fully. Mr. Thompson, the risks. A doctor began, but George cut him off. I don't care about the risks. Do it. As the medical team worked to establish a direct mental link between George and Zephyr, Major Steele and his team began the dangerous process of setting up the EMP devices in the artifact cavern. The gravitational anomalies made every movement a struggle, but they pressed on, knowing the fate of the planet hung in the balance. With the reset pulse nearly ready, the orbital defense teams in place, and the ground teams poised for action, the Human-Nigerian alliance faced its most critical moment. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of the Rocky Mountain region, but potentially the future of Earth itself in the grand tapestry of galactic affairs. Civilization, the weight of the moment pressed down on all involved as they prepared to execute their daring plan. George took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He nodded to Dr. Rodriguez, who stood ready with a team of Nigerian psychic specialists. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. As the medical team began the neural link procedure, George felt a sudden jolt. His mind exploded with alien sensations and memories, the vast expanse of space, the feeling of multiple limbs, the taste of foods he'd never encountered. For a moment, he thought he might lose himself in the flood of information. But then, like a beacon in the storm, he felt Zephyr's presence. Focusing on their shared experiences, their bond as father and son, George pushed through the disorientation. He opened his eyes to find himself standing in a mental landscape, Zephyr by his side. Dad, Zephyr said, his voice echoing strangely in this shared mindscape. I can't hold it much longer. George placed a hand on Zephyr's shoulder, feeling the strain in his son's psyche. We'll do it together, he said, channeling his strength into Zephyr. In the physical world, Dr. Rodriguez watched in amazement as the energy reading stabilized. It's working, she called out. The Human-Nigerian link is holding. Meanwhile, in the artifact cavern, Major Steele and his team fought against increasingly violent gravitational anomalies. Equipment sparked and crackled around them as they struggled to set up the final EMP device. Jenkins, secure that power coupling, Steele shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of twisting metal and cracking stone. He watched as one of his soldiers was lifted off his feet, saved only by the improvised tether system they'd rigged. Steele's calm crackled to life. Major, this is Admiral Harrison. We've got a new development. The artifacts might have some form of AI. We're modifying the reset pulse, but it's going to take time. Steele gritted his teeth, surveying the chaos around him. Understood, so we'll hold as long as we can. Up in orbit, the situation was growing dire. Captain Krelvor of the Nigerian fleet watched as Earth's experimental laser satellites vaporized incoming debris, their beams cutting bright lines across the void of space. Human vessels, adjust your trajectory by 0.3 degrees, Krelvor commanded, his multifaceted eyes tracking multiple threat vectors simultaneously. We'll cover your flank with our shield projectors. As the space battle raged, Dr. Volkov burst into the main control room on the ground, his face pale. "Admiral," he said, addressing Harrison, "the artifacts, they're not just machines. They're showing signs of sentience." Harrison's eyes widened as he processed this information. "Can we still shut them down safely?" Counselor Zandor stepped forward, his ethereal form shimmering with urgency. "We must modify the reset pulse to include an authorization code. It's our best chance to avoid triggering a hostile response." As the team scrambled to implement this change, the ground beneath the facility began to shake violently. Commander Syra's voice came over the comm system, tense but controlled. "We've got massive sinkholes forming. I'm coordinating evac, but we're running out of time." Harrison watched as Syra masterfully directed a mix of human and Nigean aircraft, plucking personnel and equipment from the collapsing terrain. Her calm efficiency in the face of chaos was a testament to her years of tactical experience. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the control room in an eerie red glow. Dr. Campbell rushed to Harrison's side, her face illuminated by the glow of her tablet. "The artifacts are interfering with global communications," she reported. "We're about to go dark." Harrison felt the weight of command settle heavily on his shoulders. "Can we maintain any form of contact?" Campbell nodded, her mind already racing. "I have an idea. We can use quantum entanglement to create a secure link. It won't be affected by the interference." As Campbell set to work, Harrison turned his attention back to the linked minds of George and Zephyr. The father and son stood at the center of a maelstrom of energy, their bodies glowing with an otherworldly light. In their shared mental space, George felt a pull, a presence beyond their joined consciousness. "Zephyr," he said, "do you feel that?" Zephyr nodded, his eyes wide. "It's the artifacts. I think we can communicate with them." Without hesitation, they reached out with their combined psychic strength, touching the ancient intelligence that lay dormant within the artifacts. The contact sent a surge of energy through the system, overloading power nodes and plunging sections of the facility into darkness. In the artifact cavern, Major Steele and his team had just finished setting up the final EMP device when the surge hit. The gravitational anomalies intensified, pinning them against the cavern walls. "Steele to command," he grunted into his comm, fighting against the crushing pressure. "Devices are in place, but we're trapped. Can't make it to the safe zone." Harrison's voice came back, distorted by static. "Understood, Major. We're assessing the situation." As alarms blared and systems failed across the facility, Harrison found himself faced with an impossible decision. The reset pulse was ready, but activating it could mean sacrificing Steele and his team. The global communications blackout left them isolated, unable to call for additional support. And in the heart of the chaos, George and Zephyr's dangerous psychic interaction with the artifact AI added an unpredictable element to an already volatile situation. Harrison looked around the control room, meeting the eyes of humans and Nigeans alike. In that moment, he knew that their next actions would determine not just the fate of the Rocky Mountains, but the future of human-Nigean relations in Earth's place in the galaxy. "All right," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let's do this." Harrison's voice cut through the chaos, his decision made. "Prepare to activate the reset pulse." A hush fell over the control room as the enormity of the situation settled in. Harrison turned to Emperor Zach Thor, who had just materialized beside him, his ethereal form flickering with urgency. "Emperor, we're about to make a decision that could change everything." "I need your input," Harrison said, his voice low and tense. Zach Thor's multifaceted eyes gleamed with understanding. "Admiral, in times of crisis, leaders must make difficult choices. We stand with you." With a sharp nod, Harrison opened a channel to Major Steele. Major, status report. Steele's voice crackled through the comm, strained but determined. Sir, devices are in place, but we're pinned down. Gravitational anomalies are off the charts. We can't reach the safe zone. Harrison closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Understood, Major. We're activating the pulse. Do what you can to protect yourselves. Copy that, sir, Steele replied, his voice steady despite the dire circumstances. It's been an honor. As Harrison gave the order to begin the countdown, the scene in the artifact cavern grew increasingly chaotic. Steele and his team fought against the crushing gravitational forces, their bodies pressed against the rough stone walls. Jenkins, Ramirez. Steele shouted over the din of groaning metal and cracking rock. Use the Nigean shield generators. We need to create a safe bubble, now. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, despite the overwhelming pressure. They activated the alien devices, creating a shimmering field of energy around them. It was an audacious attempt, but their only hope of survival. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, George and Zephyr's linked minds dug deeper into the artifact's consciousness. Their physical bodies glowed with an otherworldly light as they navigated the vast network of the ancient defense system. Dad, Zephyr's mental voice echoed, filled with awe and fear. It's incredible. The system. It's everywhere. In the Earth's crust, deep in the oceans, even in the atmosphere. George felt it too, the staggering scope of the precursor's creation. But it's failing, he realized. Millennia of neglect. It's like a machine with worn-out gears, grinding itself to pieces. As they explored further, they encountered fragmentary memories, glimpses of a long-lost alien civilization. The precursors, they learned, had seeded countless worlds with life, Earth among them. The defense system was their legacy, a final gift to protect their creations. In the control room, Dr. Campbell's voice cut through the tension. Quantum entanglement link established. We have global communications back online. Harrison wasted no time. Patch me through to all major world leaders and military command centers. They need to know what we're dealing with. As Harrison briefed the global authorities, Commander Syra's voice came through, urgent and focused. Admiral, we've got a new problem. Sinkholes are forming faster than we can evacuate. Entire city blocks are at risk. Do what you have to, Commander, Harrison replied. You have full authority to requisition any resources you need. Syra didn't hesitate. Understood. Sir, I'm mobilizing our Joint Engineering Corps. We're deploying the experimental force field generators to create safe zones. In orbit, the space around Earth had become a deadly obstacle course. Captain Krelvor's ships danced through the debris field, their movements perfectly synchronized with Earth's defense satellites. Human vessels, adjust course -15 degrees, Krelvor commanded, his voice calm despite the chaos. Nigean cruisers, form up on my flank. We need to maintain this corridor at all costs. As the reset pulse countdown entered its final stages, Dr. Rodriguez burst into the control room, her eyes wide with alarm. Admiral, we've made a critical discovery. The reset pulse. It might erase everything. Dr. Volkov followed close behind, his tablet displaying complex energy readings. The artifacts don't just control the defense system. They contain vast stores of data about cosmic threats, advanced civilizations, knowledge beyond our wildest dreams. Harrison's mind raced, weighing the immediate threat against the potential loss of invaluable information. Before he could respond, Counselor Zandor stepped forward, his form shimmering with intensity. We may have a solution, the Nigean counselor said. If we modify the pulse frequency, we might be able to target only the malfunctioning components while preserving the core databanks. What are the risks? Harrison asked, his eyes narrowing. It's not without danger, Zandor admitted. The calibration must be precise. If we're off by even a fraction, the pulse could fail entirely. As Harrison considered this new information, a commotion at the entrance to the control room drew everyone's attention. Dr. Marcus Reeves, a disheveled man with wild eyes and a reputation for controversial theories, pushed his way through the crowd. "Wait," he shouted, brandishing a tablet. "You can't activate that pulse yet. I have critical information about the precursors." Harrison raised an eyebrow, skepticism warring with desperation. "Dr. Reeves, we're in the middle of a crisis. This had better be good." Reeves nodded frantically, tapping at his tablet. "My research suggests that some humans carry a specific genetic marker left by the precursors. If we can find someone with this marker, they might be able to interface directly with the artifact system." A murmur ran through the room as the implications sank in. Harrison turned to Dr. Campbell. "How quickly can we screen our personnel for this marker?" "We can modify our medical scanners," she replied, already moving towards the exit. "Give me 10 minutes." As the search for genetically compatible individuals began, the tension in the control room reached a fever pitch. Multiple screens displayed the various crises unfolding around the globe. Syra's teams deploying force field generators to protect civilians from expanding sinkholes, Krelvor's ships weaving through an ever-thickening cloud of debris, and Major Steele's team huddled within their makeshift energy shelter in the artifact cavern. The countdown for the reset pulse ticked relentlessly forward, each second bringing them closer to a point of no return. Harrison stood at the center of it all, his mind processing a torrent of information and possibilities, knowing that his next decision could determine the fate of not just Earth, but humanity's place in the cosmos. As the facility hummed with frantic activity, no one noticed a young engineer named Thomas Parker staring at his hands in disbelief. A strange tingling sensation coursing through his body as the artifact's energy pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. Heartbeat. The strange sensation intensified, spreading through his body like an electric current. He glanced around, wondering if anyone else noticed the peculiar energy coursing through him. Dr. Campbell burst back into the control room, her eyes wide with excitement. "We've found a match," she exclaimed, waving her tablet. "One of our junior engineers, Thomas Parker, carries the precursor genetic marker." Harrison's head snapped up. "Where is he?" "Right here, sir," a voice called out. Thomas Parker stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and purpose. I think something's happening to me." Dr. Reeves rushed to Parker's side, his earlier frenzy replaced by focused intensity. "Mr. Parker, we need you in the artifact chamber immediately. You may be our only chance to stabilize the system." As Parker was quickly ushered towards the artifact chamber, Harrison turned to the rest of his team. "We're going with Counselor Zandor's plan. Modify the pulse frequency to target only the malfunctioning components. Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Volkov, stand by to analyze any data we can preserve." The countdown for the reset pulse entered its final seconds. In the artifact chamber, Thomas Parker approached the central artifact under Dr. Reeves' guidance. The young engineer's hand trembled as he reached out to touch the glowing surface. The moment Parker's fingers made contact, a brilliant surge of energy erupted from the artifact. It enveloped him in a cocoon of shimmering light, creating a visible connection between the man and the ancient technology. Simultaneously, in the medical bay, George and Zephyr gasped in unison. Their linked minds were suddenly flooded with a torrent of information from the artifact's AI, visions of the precursor civilization, their advanced technologies, and the true purpose of the defense system cascaded through their shared consciousness. "Zephyr," George's mental voice echoed, strained but focused. "We need to guide Parker, the system. It's trying to communicate through him." Together, father and son reached out with their combined psychic strength, forming a three-way connection between human, Nigean, and precursor technology. In the control room, Harrison watched the final seconds tick away. "Activate the pulse," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension gripping his chest. The reset pulse fired, sending a carefully calibrated electromagnetic wave through the facility and surrounding area. The artifacts pulsed with blinding light, and for a heart-stopping moment, every system in the facility went dark. In the artifact cavern, Major Steele and his team huddled within their makeshift energy shelter, the Nigean shield generators straining against the pulse's onslaught. "Hold on!" Steele shouted as the cavern filled with a deafening roar. Seconds stretched into eternity as the facility remained silent and dark. Then, with a low hum, backup generators kicked in, bathing the control room in dim emergency lighting. "Status report," Harrison barked, his eyes scanning the slowly reactivating screens. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers flew over her console. "The artifact's energy emissions are stabilizing," she reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Geological disturbances are subsiding, but, sir, the system isn't shutting down completely." Dr. Volkov leaned in, his brow furrowed. "It appears to be entering some kind of controlled dormancy state. And Parker, he's still connected to it somehow." In orbit, Captain Krelvor's voice crackled through the comm system. "Admiral, the pulse has disrupted the debris field. We're seizing the opportunity to clear the most dangerous orbital objects." "Understood, Captain," Harrison replied. "Good work." Commander Syra's update followed quickly. "Force field generators are holding. Sir, we've prevented further damage from the residual seismic activity. Shifting to search and rescue operations now." Harrison nodded, a small measure of relief washing over him. "Well done, Commander. Keep me updated." As the immediate crisis began to subside, Emperor Zach Thor materialized beside Harrison, his ethereal form pulsing with an intensity that matched the gravity of the moment. "Admiral," the Nigean ruler began, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with what could only be described as admiration, "the effectiveness of our collaboration in this crisis has been most impressive. I propose we establish a permanent joint task force to study and maintain this precursor defense system." Harrison's eyebrows shot up, recognizing the monumental shift this offer represented. "Emperor, we would be honored. But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." As if on cue, the doors to the control room slid open. George and Zephyr entered, supported by medical staff, their faces pale but eyes blazing with newfound knowledge. Behind them, Dr. Reeves guided a dazed-looking Thomas Parker. "Admiral," George began, his voice hoarse, "we've learned so much. The defense system, it's not just meant for Earth. It's part of a vast galactic network. And Earth might have a larger role to play in all of this than we ever imagined." Harrison's mind raced with the implications. As he opened his mouth to respond, Major Steele's team stumbled into the control room, looking battered but alive. "Sir," Steele reported, snapping a salute despite his obvious exhaustion, "the artifact cavern. It's changing. New chambers, control interfaces we've never seen before. I think this is just a beginning." Harrison looked around the room, taking in the faces of humans and Nigeans alike, all waiting for his next move. The world as they knew it had changed irrevocably in the span of a few hours. Ancient technology beyond their comprehension, deepening alien alliances, and the dawning realization that humanity's destiny might be written in the stars, all of these now rested squarely on his shoulders. He took a deep breath, straightened his uniform, and began issuing orders. The immediate danger had passed, but a new chapter in Earth's history was just beginning to unfold. The control room buzzed with renewed activity as Admiral Harrison began issuing rapid-fire orders. "Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Volkov, I want a full analysis of that data we managed to preserve. Major Steele, get your team ready for a debrief. We need to understand exactly what happened in that cavern. As the various teams dispersed to their tasks, Harrison turned to Emperor Zach Thor, whose ethereal form still pulsed with intensity. Emperor, your offer of a joint task force is most welcome. We'll need to coordinate our efforts if we're going to unravel the mysteries of this precursor defense system. Zach Thor nodded, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. Indeed, Admiral. I propose we establish a permanent research facility here at the Rocky Mountain Complex. Our combined expertise will be crucial in the days ahead. Before Harrison could respond, Dr. Campbell approached, her face etched with concern. Admiral, we need to discuss Thomas Parker. His connection to the artifact system is unprecedented. We don't fully understand the implications. Harrison's brow furrowed. Agreed. Set up a secure medical bay for Mr. Parker. I want round-the-clock monitoring and a full battery of tests. As the facility hummed with activity, Harrison pulled Major Steele aside. Major, I have a new assignment for you. Codename Project Sentinel. We need to find out if there are others like Parker out there. Steele nodded, his expression grim. You think there might be more people with this precursor genetic marker? It's a possibility we can't ignore, Harrison replied. Assemble a team. Start with our military personnel, then expand to civilian populations. We need to keep this quiet for now. As Steele departed to begin his covert operation, Harrison turned his attention to the diplomatic challenges ahead. The offer of a joint human-Nigean research facility was tantalizing, but he knew it would be met with skepticism from some Earth governments. Over the next few days, Harrison engaged in a flurry of secure video conferences with world leaders. He emphasized the potential benefits of the collaboration while addressing concerns about sovereignty and security. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov made a breakthrough in their analysis of the artifact data. They burst into Harrison's office, their eyes alight with excitement. Admiral, we've found something, Rodriguez said, spreading a map across his desk. These coordinates, they point to other precursor sites around the globe. Volkov nodded eagerly. They're hidden beneath ancient ruins, natural landmarks. We've identified at least a dozen locations so far. Harrison studied the map, his mind racing with the implications. We need to investigate these sites immediately. Major Steele's team will provide security, and we'll need Nigerian support as well. As preparations for the expeditions began, Harrison received word that Dr. Marcus Reeves would lead the first team to a site hidden beneath an ancient temple in Southeast Asia. The day of the expedition's departure arrived. Harrison stood on the tarmac, watching as the joint human-Nigean team boarded their transport. Dr. Reeves approached, his earlier frenzy replaced by focused grit. We're ready, Admiral, Reeves said. This could be the discovery of the century. Harrison nodded. Be careful out there, Doctor. We don't know what you might encounter. As the transport lifted off, Harrison couldn't shake a sense of unease. The activation of the precursor defense system had changed everything, and he suspected Earth's troubles were not nearly finished. Back at the Rocky Mountain facility, Zephyr and George worked tirelessly with Thomas Parker, helping him understand and control his connection to the precursor system. In a secure lab, Parker sat within a containment field, his hands hovering over a replica of the artifact. Focus, Thomas, Zephyr said, his voice calm and reassuring. Try to feel the energy flow. Parker closed his eyes, concentrating. The replica began to glow, pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. Suddenly, holographic displays sprang to life around him, filling the air with swirling data streams and complex diagrams. George gasped. He's not just activating it. He's interacting with it, manipulating the system itself. As they watched in awe, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Harrison rushed into the lab, his face a mask of concern. "What's happening?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, Counselor Zandor materialized beside them, his form shimmering with urgency. "Admiral," the Nigean said, his voice grave, "we've detected multiple alien vessels entering the solar system. It seems the activation of the precursor defense system has not gone unnoticed." Harrison's heart made. He turned to his team, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Alert all Earth governments. Contact Emperor Zach Thor. We need to prepare for potential first contact scenarios." As the facility erupted into a new frenzy of activity, Harrison stared at the holographic displays surrounding Parker. The young engineer's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and wonder, reflecting the enormity of the challenges that lay ahead. The activation of the precursor defense system had thrust Earth onto the galactic stage, ready or not. As Harrison began coordinating Earth's response to this new development, he knew that humanity's place in the cosmos would never be the same again. As Harrison contemplated the challenges ahead, a priority message flashed across his screen. He opened it, his eyes widening as he read the contents. "Emperor," he said, turning to Zach Thor, "we have a new development. The Galactic Conclave is sending a delegation to Earth." The Nigean ruler's ethereal form shimmered with surprise. "The Conclave? This is unprecedented." Harrison nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. "We need to prepare. This meeting could determine Earth's future in the galactic community." Over the next few days, Harrison worked tirelessly to assemble a joint human-Nigean diplomatic team. George and Zephyr were natural choices, their unique perspectives invaluable for the upcoming negotiations. Key human leaders from various nations were also brought into the fold, each carefully vetted for their diplomatic acumen and ability to handle the unprecedented situation. As preparations for the conclave's arrival continued, Harrison received an urgent communication from Major Steele. The Project Sentinel team had made a significant discovery in the Andes Mountains. Steele's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Admiral, we've found a village. These people, their genetic markers are off the charts. One in particular, a young man named Carlos Vega, shows compatibility levels even higher than Parker's." Harrison leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Bring him in, Major. We need to understand what this means for our operations." Meanwhile, at the Rocky Mountain facility, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov were making remarkable progress on the neural interface. Harrison observed a test session, watching as Thomas Parker sat within a specially designed chamber, electrodes attached to his temples. "We're ready to begin," Dr. Rodriguez announced, her fingers flying over the control panel. Parker closed his eyes, his face a mask of concentration. The screens around them came to life, displaying a dizzying array of data streams and holographic projections. "It's working," Dr. Volkov said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The interface is distributing the load across multiple neural pathways. Parker's vitals are stable." Harrison nodded, impressed. "Good work, doctors." This could be the key to managing the precursor system without putting undue strain on a single individual. As the test concluded, an alarm blared through the facility. Harrison rushed to the command center, where a harried communications officer awaited him. "Sir, we've lost contact with Dr. Reeves' expedition in Southeast Asia," the officer reported. "Last transmission indicated they were under attack by an unknown force." Harrison's eyebrows furrowed. "Get me Major Steele. We need to mount a rescue operation immediately." Within hours, Steele's specialized task force was en route to the precursor site. Harrison monitored the situation from the command center, tension building as the minutes ticked by. Finally, Steele's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, We've secured the site and extracted the research team. But, sir, you need to see this. The screen filled with images of advanced weaponry, unlike anything Harrison had seen before. What are we looking at, Major? We're not sure, sir, Steele replied. But these aren't Earth-made. And the group that attacked the expedition? They call themselves the Guardians of the Ancients. They seem to have some serious off-world connections. Before Harrison could respond, another alert demanded his attention. The Galactic Conclave delegation had entered Earth's solar system. "It's time," Harrison said, straightening his uniform. "Escort our guests to the designated safe zones." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Harrison coordinated with Major Steele, dispatching joint human-Aegean teams to secure precursor sites worldwide. Reports flooded in of widespread power outages and communication disruptions across the globe. In the midst of the chaos, Harrison received an urgent transmission from the Rocky Mountain facility. Dr. Volkov's face appeared on the screen, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "Admiral, you need to see this," the scientist said, panning the camera to show the lab behind him. Holographic interfaces had sprung to life throughout the facility, displaying streams of complex data and schematics. It's like the entire precursor system is coming online, revealing its secrets. Harrison's response was cut short by another alert. Major Steele's voice came through, tense and focused. "Sir, we've got multiple bogies approaching precursor sites. It's the Guardians of the Ancients. They're launching coordinated attacks worldwide." "Engage and neutralize," Harrison ordered. "Protect those sites at all costs." As reports of battles around the globe poured in, Harrison turned his attention to the stranded conclave delegates. The aliens were gathered in a secure wing of the facility, their diverse forms a testament to the complexity of galactic politics. "Your Excellencies," Harrison addressed them, "I apologize for this unforeseen circumstance. We're doing everything in our power to restore your ships and ensure your safety." The serpentine delegate slithered forward, its scales shimmering in the emergency lighting. "Admiral, it seems your world holds more surprises than we anticipated. Perhaps it's time we discuss the true nature of the precursor system and its role in galactic affairs." Before Harrison could respond, Emperor Zach Thor appeared, his form more stable now. "Admiral, I've ordered additional Nigean military assets to Earth. They will assist in securing the precursor sites and maintaining order." Harrison nodded, aware of the potential diplomatic complications this move might cause. He could already imagine the protests from various human governments, wary of increased alien presence on their soil. As if reading his thoughts, his comm device buzzed with messages from world leaders demanding explanations and assurances. Harrison took a deep breath, steeling himself for the delicate balancing act ahead. Suddenly, Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Dr. Reeves' team at the portal site. The device activated unexpectedly. We think they've been pulled through." Harrison's mind raced with the implications. He turned to George and Zephyr, who had been assisting with the delegates. "I need you two to lead a rescue mission. Take a joint human-Aegean team and find out where that portal leads." As George and Zephyr rushed to prepare for their mission, Carlos Vega was brought into the secure conference room. The young man's eyes were wide, his body trembling slightly as he took in the assembled alien delegates. "Mr. Vega," Harrison said, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder, "I need you to tell these representatives what you've learned about the precursor system." Carlos nodded, swallowing hard before he began to speak. "The system. It's not just for Earth's defense. It's part of something bigger, something that spans the entire galaxy. And it's meant to protect us all from something ancient, something terrifying." The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The conclave delegates exchanged meaningful glances, their earlier hostility replaced by a shared sense of purpose. As Harrison prepared to delve deeper into this revelation, his comm device buzzed once more. Major Steele's voice came through, filled with barely suppressed excitement. "Admiral, you're not going to believe this. We found something in Antarctica. A hidden precursor facility, buried deep in the ice. It might be the control center for the entire Earth-based network." Harrison's pulse quickened as he processed this new information. He looked around the room, at the assembled delegates, at Carlos Vega with his newfound connection to an ancient power, at the holographic displays showing battles raging across the globe. Earth had been thrust into the center of a galactic drama, its destiny now irrevocably intertwined with forces beyond human comprehension. As Harrison began to formulate plans for an expedition to the Antarctic facility, he knew that every decision, every action from this point forward would shape not just humanity's future, but the fate of countless civilizations across the stars. Harrison's mind raced as he processed the implications of the Antarctic discovery. He turned to the assembled delegates and Carlos Vega, his voice filled with urgency. "We've located what appears to be the control center for Earth's precursor network. I'm assembling a team to investigate immediately." Within hours, a specialized expedition was underway. Major Steele led the group, which included Carlos Vega and a hand-picked team of human and Nigean experts. As they boarded the sleek Nigean transport vessel, Harrison pulled Steele aside. "Keep Vega safe," he said in a low voice. "His connection to the precursor tech could be our key to understanding all of this." Harrison's reply was cut short as Carlos Vega's voice echoed through the comm system, broadcast from the Antarctic facility. "Admiral, you need to see this. We've found something big." The video feed showed Carlos and Major Steele standing in a vast underground hangar. Behind them, row upon row of sleek, otherworldly craft stretched into the distance. "Are those?" Harrison began, his voice filled with awe. "Precursor ships," Steele confirmed. "A whole damn fleet of them." As Harrison stared at the image of the ancient vessels, he felt the weight of Earth's new reality settling on his shoulders. The planet now possessed offensive capabilities beyond imagination, but it also faced isolation and the looming threat of an ancient, cosmic enemy. The precursor ships gleamed in the hangar's dim light, holding the promise of interstellar travel and untold technological advancements. But as Carlos Vega approached one of the vessels, his hand outstretched to touch its surface, Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was on the verge of a journey it might not be prepared to take. As Carlos's hand made contact with the sleek surface of the nearest precursor ship, a low hum reverberated through the cavernous hangar. The vessel's exterior began to glow with a soft, ethereal light, and suddenly, holographic displays sprang to life around them. Major Steele stepped back, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "What did you do, Vega?" Carlos shook his head, eyes wide with wonder. I'm not sure. It's like the ship recognized me somehow." The holographic displays flickered and stabilized, revealing intricate star charts and navigation data. Streams of alien symbols cascaded across the screens, shifting and rearranging themselves in complex patterns. One of the Nigean scientists rushed forward, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly as he scanned the data. "Incredible! These vessels. They're capable of faster-than-light travel. The technology is far beyond anything we've ever seen." Major Steele tapped his comm device. "Admiral Harrison, you need to see this. The precursor ships are active, and they're packing some serious tech." Harrison's voice crackled through the comm. "Understood, Major. I'm dispatching additional forces to your location immediately. Secure that facility at all costs." As Steele began coordinating with the incoming reinforcements, Carlos moved deeper into the hangar, drawn by an inexplicable pull. Each ship he passed hummed to life, their systems awakening after millennia of dormancy. Back at the Rocky Mountain facility, Admiral Harrison turned to Emperor Zach Thor, his expression grave. "Your Majesty, we need to lock down that Antarctic site. If those ships fall into the wrong hands..." Zach Thor nodded. "Agreed. I'll mobilize our orbital defenses to provide additional coverage." As they worked to secure the newfound precursor fleet, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, we have a situation. The planetary defense grid is causing severe weather disturbances worldwide." Harrison rushed to the main display, where satellite imagery showed massive storm systems forming over major population centers. Coastal areas were already reporting unprecedented tidal surges. "Initiate global evacuation protocols," Harrison ordered. "Coordinate with the Human Aegean Coalition for emergency response." As the coalition forces scrambled to manage the escalating crisis, the Galactic Conclave delegates in New York made a breakthrough. The Serpentine delegate slid it up to Harrison, its scales reflecting the emergency lighting. "Admiral, we've modified one of our communication devices to penetrate the energy shield. We've established limited contact with our ships in orbit." Harrison's eyes widened. "That could be our lifeline. We need to share what we've learned about the precursor system and the potential Void Herald threat." As information began to flow between Earth and the orbiting alien vessels, Harrison received an urgent transmission from the portal site. George's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Admiral, we've stabilized the portal. But there's more. We've received a transmission from the other side. It's Dr. Reeves and his team. They're alive, but they need help." Harrison felt a surge of hope. "Can you get them back?" George shook his head. "Not yet. We're working on it. But, sir, there's something else. The message. It was fragmented, but Dr. Reeves mentioned something about multiple threats. We're not sure what he meant." Before Harrison could respond, Dr. Rodriguez cut in again. "Admiral, you need to see this. Dr. Volkov and I have been analyzing the precursor data streams. The Void Heralds, they're not a single entity. We're looking at a diverse collection of cosmic anomalies and hostile forces." Harrison's mind raced with the implications. "So we're not just preparing for one enemy, but potentially many." As if on cue, alerts flooded the command center. Major Steele's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Admiral, we've got multiple attacks on precursor sites worldwide. The Guardians of the Ancients are making their move, and they've got some serious firepower." Harrison watched as tactical displays lit up with conflict zones across the globe. The Guardians were employing advanced weapons and tactics that suggested off-world support, pushing coalition forces to their limits. In Antarctica, Carlos Vega stood at the center of the precursor hangar, surrounded by the now-active fleet. As he tried to make sense of the flood of information pouring through his mind, a new presence made itself known. A holographic figure materialized before him, its form shifting and flowing like liquid light. When it spoke, its voice resonated not just in the air but in Carlos's very thoughts. "Greetings, Inheritor. I am Sentinel, caretaker of the Earth-based Precursor Network. You have awakened us from our long dormancy." Major Steele stepped forward, his weapon lowered but at the ready. "What are you? What is the purpose of all this?" Sentinel turned its fluid gaze to Steele. "We are the last line of defense against the encroaching void. The heralds come in many forms, each a threat to the very fabric of existence. We were created to stand against them, and now, it seems, we are needed once more." As Sentinel began to share critical information about the defense system's capabilities, Emperor Zach Thor appeared in holographic form beside Harrison in the command center. "Admiral," the Emperor said, his tone grave, "we need a unified command structure to face these threats. I propose the formation of an Earth Defense Council, Human leaders, Nigerian representatives, and members of the Galactic Conclave working together. Harrison nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Agreed. We'll need every advantage we can get. As the newly formed Earth Defense Council began to take shape, Harrison looked out over the command center. The display showed a world in chaos. Extreme weather patterns, battles raging at precursor sites, and the looming threat of cosmic forces beyond their understanding. Yet amid the turmoil, he saw hope. The dormant precursor fleet, now awakening. The combined strength of humanity and their alien allies. And at the center of it all, Carlos Vega, connected to an ancient power that might just be the key to their survival. Harrison took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. The Earth Defense Council had a monumental task before them: to harness the power of the precursor technology, unravel the mysteries of the Void Heralds, and prepare for a conflict that would shape the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. As alarms continued to blare and reports flooded in from around the globe, Harrison turned to address the assembled leaders. The time for action had come. Come. The time for action had arrived. Ladies and gentlemen of the Earth Defense Council, Harrison began, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. We face unprecedented challenges. But we also have unprecedented opportunities. The newly formed council, an eclectic mix of human leaders, Nigerian representatives, and members of the Galactic Conclave delegation, gathered around a large holographic display in the heart of a secure underground facility beneath the United Nations headquarters in New York City. The room hummed with tension and the low murmur of multiple species communicating in their native tongues, translated in real time by advanced AI systems. Admiral Harrison tapped a control, and the display shifted to show a global map dotted with pulsing red markers. As you can see, the Guardians of the Ancients have launched coordinated attacks on multiple precursor sites. Major Steel's forces are engaged in heavy combat at the Antarctic facility and the Rocky Mountain complex. Emperor Zach Thor leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic light. What is the status of the precursor fleet in Antarctica? Before Harrison could respond, a new alert flashed across the screen. Major Steel's face appeared, his expression grim and streaked with grime. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. One of the precursor ships just activated its navigational system. The council members leaned in, their attention riveted as Steel's camera panned to show a shimmering holographic star map hovering above the sleek lines of an ancient vessel. Carlos Vega stood nearby, his eyes unfocused as he processed information from the Sentinel AI. The map shows potential locations of other precursor outposts, Steel reported. And there's more. We believe we've identified the last known coordinates of the Void Heralds. A ripple of concern passed through the council. Harrison's brow furrowed as he processed the implications. Major, what's the status of the fleet? Can any of those ships be made operational? Steele shook his head. Not yet. So we're still trying to understand the basic systems. But with the right resources and expertise, we might be able to. His words were cut off by a deafening explosion. The camera shook violently, and alarms blared in the background. We're under attack, Steele shouted. The Guardians have breached our outer defenses. Harrison turned to the council, his voice urgent. We need to make a decision now. Do we focus our resources on understanding and controlling the precursor technology we already have? Or do we launch an expedition to Mars to recover the weapons Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov have identified? The council erupted into heated debate. Human leaders argued for caution, while Nigerian representatives pushed for immediate action. The Galactic Conclave delegates offered their own perspectives, their alien thought processes adding new dimensions to the discussion. As the arguments intensified, a new voice cut through the clamor. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's face appeared on a secondary display, her expression a mix of excitement and urgency. Admiral, we've made a critical discovery. The precursor installation on Mars. It's not just weapons. We believe it contains a key component of the defense network, possibly capable of extending the shield around the entire solar system. The council fell silent, the weight of this revelation settling over them. Harrison looked from face to face, seeing the same realization in their eyes. This could change everything. Before he could speak, another alert sounded. George's voice came through, tinny and distorted. "Admiral, we've made it through the portal. We're on some kind of ancient world. There are precursor ruins everywhere. We've detected signs of Dr. Reeves and his team, but, sir, there's something else here. Something big." The stakes were clear. Earth's defenses were activated but incomplete. The guardians of the ancients were pressing their attack. And now, somewhere beyond a stabilized portal, another mystery awaited. Harrison took a deep breath, steadying himself. He looked at the assembled council, at the faces of those who now held the fate of not just Earth, but possibly the entire galaxy in their hands. The next decision they made would set the course for humanity's future. "Council members," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "we need to act. The question before us is not just about Earth's defense. It's about our role in a cosmic conflict we're only beginning to understand." As if to underscore his words, a new alert flashed across the main display. The Sentinel AI's warning scrolled across the screen. "Cosmic event detected. Possible void herald approach imminent." The council members exchanged looks of alarm and tenacity. The time for debate was over. Now, they had to choose their path forward, knowing that every second counted. Harrison's finger hovered over the communication controls, ready to issue orders that would shape the course of history. The weight of command had never felt heavier, but he knew that whatever they decided, humanity would face the coming storm head-on. Harrison's finger hovered over the communication controls, poised to issue orders that would shape humanity's future. Suddenly, the room erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Screens flashed with urgent warnings as a massive energy surge swept across the global precursor network. "Source identified," a technician shouted. "It's coming from Mars." Before anyone could react, a brilliant beam of energy burst forth from the Martian surface, piercing through Earth's planetary defense shield with terrifying ease. The assembled leaders watched in stunned silence as the beam struck a precise location in the Gobi Desert. Harrison snapped into action. "I need a reconnaissance team at that impact site immediately," he ordered, turning to Emperor Zach Thor. "Can your forces provide air support?" The Nigean Emperor nodded, his compound eyes reflecting the urgency of the moment. "Consider it done, Admiral." Within hours, a joint human-Nigean team touched down at the edge of a massive crater in the Gobi. At its center stood a glowing, obelisk-like structure, unmistakably of precursor origin. As the team approached, Carlos Vega arrived via emergency transport, his connection to the Sentinel AI making him an essential part of the investigation. The moment Carlos stepped near the obelisk, it hummed to life. He turned to face the assembled leaders of the Earth Defense Council, his expression grim but determined. "And now," he said, "we prepare for war." War. The fate of humanity and our newfound allies rests on what we do next. As Harrison's words hung in the air, the main display flickered to life with an urgent transmission from Major Steele. The officer's face was taut with concentration as he piloted the horizon through the vastness of space. "Admiral, we've cleared Earth's orbit and are accelerating towards the Kuiper Belt," Steele reported. The ship's responding well, but his words were cut short as the vessel shuddered violently. "What's happening, Major?" Harrison demanded, leaning forward. Steele's hands danced across the alien controls. "We've entered the asteroid belt, sir, and we've got company." The camera panned to show a swarm of metallic objects emerging from within the rocky debris. Dormant precursor defense platforms, awakened by the horizon's passage, began to track the vessel with ominous precision. Evasive maneuvers. Steele barked to his crew. The horizon banked sharply, narrowly avoiding a concentrated energy blast from the nearest platform. As the expedition fought for survival in the depths of space, Earth faced its own crisis. Alarms blared across the command center as reports flooded in from around the globe. Multiple Guardian attacks detected. A technician shouted, "They're hitting precursor sites worldwide." Harrison's eyes widened as he processed the information. Where's the heaviest concentration? The Mariana Trench. Sir, our sensors are picking up massive energy readings from an underwater facility we didn't even know existed. Without hesitation, Harrison turned to his communications officer. "Get me Captain Leon. We're deploying the Trident team." Within minutes, a fleet of sleek submersibles, their hulls gleaming with adapted precursor tech, plunged into the Pacific. Captain Liang's voice crackled over the comms as they descended into the abyss. Approaching the target zone. Visibility is near zero, but our precursor sensors are cutting through the murk. As the defense of Earth's oceans unfolded, a new crisis emerged in the Gobi Desert. The obelisk Carlos Vega had activated began to shift and transform, its smooth surface fracturing into a complex array of antennae and transmitters. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice, tinged with both excitement and fear, came through on the command center speakers. "Admiral, the obelisk is linking directly to the Martian installation. We're being flooded with data." "Can you make sense of it?" Harrison asked, his mind racing with the implications. "We're trying, but it's overwhelming our systems." "Wait." Elena paused, her breath catching. "Admiral, we're seeing tactical data on the Void Heralds. Their weaknesses, their battle strategies, it's all here." As the scientists worked feverishly to process the influx of information, another transmission cut through the chaos. George's face appeared on screen, his expression a mix of relief and urgency. "Admiral, we've found Dr. Reeves and his team. They're alive, but—" He glanced over his shoulder, his voice dropping. "Sir, they say the Void Heralds are coming. Soon." Harrison's heart made as he absorbed this latest piece of news. He turned to Emperor Zach Thor, who had been overseeing the integration of the Nigean fleet with Earth's defenses. "Emperor, I need your ships ready for immediate deployment. We may have incoming." The Nigean leader's compound eyes flickered with drive. "Our vessels stand ready, Admiral. We will face this threat together." As if in response to the Emperor's words, a series of alerts flashed across the command center's displays. Energy signatures, unmistakably similar to those of Void Herald scout ships, appeared at the edge of the Oort cloud. Harrison's voice cut through the rising tension. "Deploy the Joint Task Force. Intercept and engage those signatures before they can penetrate further." As the combined human-Nigean fleet moved to confront the approaching threat, a medical emergency unfolded at the Rocky Mountain facility. Carlos Vega convulsed on his bed, his eyes rolling back as the Sentinel AI poured information into his mind. Dr. Amelia Chang's voice was strained as she reported to Harrison. "We're losing him, Admiral. The neural load is too much for his human physiology." "Do whatever it takes to keep him alive, Doctor," Harrison ordered. "His connection to the Sentinel may be our best hope for survival." In a desperate move, the medical team transferred Vega into a precursor stasis pod. As his body stabilized, his mind delved deeper into the vast repository of precursor knowledge. Across the solar system, Major Steele's expedition finally approached its destination. The horizon decelerated as it neared a massive structure hidden within a dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt. "My God," Steele breathed, taking in the sight of the ancient space station. "It's bigger than anything we've ever built." His awe was short-lived as the station's defenses sprang to life. Energy barriers shimmered into existence, and weapon platforms swiveled to track the approaching ship. Steele gripped the controls, his mind racing through the limited options. All hands, brace for impact. We're going in. With a thought, he activated one of the Horizon's untested weapons. A pulse of energy shot forth, colliding with the station's outer defenses. The barrier flickered and failed, but alarms blared throughout the ship as systems overloaded from the strain. As the Horizon limped towards the now vulnerable station, long-range sensors back on Earth detected a massive energy surge at the heliopause. Multiple objects, far larger than any scout ship, entered the solar system at incredible speeds. Admiral Harrison stood at the center of the command room, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. This is it. The Void Heralds are here. Here, the Void Heralds are entering the solar system. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as Admiral Harrison's words sank in. Tactical displays lit up, showing the first wave of Void Herald ships breaching the heliopause. All coalition forces, this is Admiral Harrison. Initiate Operation Bulwark. Engage the enemy at the system's edge. Let's give them a welcome they won't forget. The combined human-Aegean fleet surged forward, their engines flaring bright against the backdrop of space. As they approached the invading force, the void between them lit up with a dazzling array of weapons fire. Energy beams crisscrossed the darkness, while swarms of missiles left glowing trails in their wake. On the bridge of the Aegean flagship, Emperor Zach Thor's compound eyes reflected the chaos of battle. Concentrate fire on their lead vessels, he commanded, his carapace gleaming under the harsh light of the tactical displays. We must disrupt their formation. The coalition ships executed a series of intricate maneuvers, weaving through the Void Herald's initial barrage. A human cruiser, its hull reinforced with precursor alloys, took a direct hit but held together. Its return fire tore through an enemy frigate, reducing it to a field of debris. As the battle raged in the outer system, Major Steele and his team worked feverishly within the newly discovered precursor station in the Kuiper Belt. Their fingers danced across alien control panels, deciphering symbols and activating long-dormant systems. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Chun, her eyes wide with excitement, "I think I've found the weapon's control." Steele rushed over, placing his hand on a pulsing orb. The station hummed to life around them, vast sections of its structure reconfiguring before their eyes. Massive energy projectors extended from hidden compartments, their barrels aimed at the distant battle. "By God," Steele breathed, "it's a fortress." Without warning, the station unleashed its power. Beams of concentrated energy, far more potent than anything in the Coalition's arsenal, lanced out across the solar system. They struck the Void Herald fleet with pinpoint accuracy, vaporizing several ships in an instant. Back on Earth, Carlos Vega's body lay motionless in the precursor stasis pod, but his mind raced. The Sentinel AI merged with his consciousness, feeding him a constant stream of tactical data. Through their shared perception, he saw the battle unfold in real time, predicting enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Dr. Amelia Chong monitored his vital signs, her brow furrowed with concern. "Admiral," she reported, "Vega's neural activity is off the charts, but he's stable. He's feeding tactical data directly to our systems." Harrison nodded, his eyes fixed on the main display. Thanks to Vega's insights, Coalition ships were anticipating and countering Void Herald attack patterns, gaining a crucial edge in the chaotic space battle. On Mars, Dr. Reeves and his team had finally broken through the security lockdown. They rushed through the newly accessible chambers of the precursor installation, their headlamps illuminating ancient machinery. "Over here!" shouted Dr. Yumi Tanaka, gesturing toward a sealed chamber. The team worked together to bypass its locking mechanism, revealing a room bathed in a soft, pulsing light. At its center stood a device unlike anything they had ever seen. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, emanating waves of energy that made the air shimmer. "This must be it," Reeves said, his voice filled with awe. "The weapon capable of disrupting Void Herald energy signatures. We need to get this operational. Now." As they began the delicate process of activating the device, alarms blared throughout the facility. The Void Heralds had breached Mars' orbital defenses. In the depths of the Mariana Trench, Captain Liang's submersibles finally reached their target. The underwater precursor facility loomed before them, its architecture both alien and oddly organic. "All units prepare to dock," Liang ordered. "We secure this facility at all costs." As the teams entered the structure, they encountered automated defense systems that sprang to life after millennia of dormancy. Concentrated bursts of sound and light forced them back, but Nigerian tech specialists quickly adapted, using reverse-engineered precursor devices to override the ancient security protocols. They fought their way to the facility's core, where a massive control center awaited them. Captain Liang approached the central console, her hand hovering over a pulsing geometric shape. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, pressing her palm against the surface. The facility surged with power. A low hum reverberated through the ocean, growing in intensity until the water itself seemed to vibrate. Suddenly, a massive energy field burst forth from the seafloor, rising through the water and extending into the atmosphere above. On the surface, ships and coastal observers watched in awe as a shimmering dome of energy expanded to cover a significant portion of the Pacific. Coalition vessels, battered from their encounters with Void Herald forces, limped toward this unexpected sanctuary. High above the Earth, Emperor Zach Thor's flagship engaged in a deadly dance with one of the larger Void Herald vessels. Precursor-enhanced weapons tore through the enemy's outer defenses, creating a breach in its hull. "Boarding parties, prepare for assault," Zach Thor commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We take this ship and uncover their secrets." The Emperor himself led the charge, his armor gleaming as he stepped into the teleportation chamber. In a flash of light, he and his elite guard materialized within the alien vessel. They pushed forward, fighting through corridors filled with swirling darkness and otherworldly geometries. As the battle for the solar system intensified, the attention of both sides turned to the Kuiper Belt. The precursor station, now fully operational under Major Steele's command, had become the linchpin of the Coalition's outer defense. Its weapons blazed continuously, creating a barrier of destruction that the Void Herald fleet struggled to penetrate. But the station's power had not gone unnoticed. A massive shape emerged from the depths of space, a Void Herald dreadnought of unprecedented size. It moved with ominous purpose toward the precursor installation, shrugging off the energy beams that had decimated its smaller counterparts. Steele's voice crackled over the comms, tension evident in his tone. "Admiral Harrison, we've got a problem out here. This thing's big enough to swallow a planet, and it's coming straight for us." As Harrison processed this new threat, another alert demanded his attention. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy surge from the direction of Alpha Centauri. The Admiral's heart sank as he realized the implications. "All Coalition forces," he broadcast, his voice grave but determined. "Prepare for incoming. Void Herald reinforcements have entered the system. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Across the solar system, human and Nigerian defenders steeled themselves for the onslaught to come. The battle had only just begun, and the true test of their determination lay ahead. Ahead, the fate of humanity and their alien allies hung in the balance as the Void Herald reinforcements approached from Alpha Centauri. Admiral Harrison's mind raced, processing the influx of information from multiple fronts. He knew they needed a game-changing strategy to turn the tide. His eyes darted to a blinking notification on his command console, a message from George and Zephyr's team on the alien world. "This is it," he muttered, quickly scanning the report. "The teleportation network." Without hesitation, Harrison opened a channel to all coalition forces. Attention all units. We're implementing Operation Quantum Leap. Stand by for new deployment orders. Across the solar system, coalition ships and ground forces received encrypted coordinates. In a dazzling display of precursor technology, entire battalions and squadrons vanished from their positions, only to reappear at strategic locations moments later. On the Kuiper Belt station, Major Steele watched in awe as reinforcements materialized around him. Fresh troops and precursor weaponry flooded into the ancient fortress, bolstering its defenses against the looming Void Herald dreadnought. "Chun, get those new energy projectors online now," Steele barked, his eyes fixed on the approaching behemoth. The station hummed with newfound power as additional precursor tech integrated into its systems. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out, forming a crackling barrier at the system's edge. Meanwhile, on Mars, Dr. Reeves and his team worked feverishly to extract the Void Herald energy disruptor from its ancient housing. Sweat beaded on Reeves' forehead as he carefully disconnected the final power coupling. "Got it," he exclaimed, lifting the device. "Tanaka, begin transmission of the schematics to Earth and the Nigean fleet. We need to get this into production immediately." Aboard the captured Void Herald vessel, Emperor Zach Thor led his elite guard through twisting corridors of impossible geometry. The air itself seemed to resist their passage, filled with swirling shadows that clawed at their armor. "Push forward," Zach Thor commanded, his mandibles clicking with grit. They burst into the ship's central control hub, a cavernous space dominated by pulsing, organic-looking consoles. As his guard secured the room, Zach Thor interfaced with the alien technology. His compound eyes widened as he absorbed the flow of tactical data. "By the Hive Mother," he breathed. "Admiral Harrison must see this." Back on Earth, Carlos Vega's body lay motionless in the stasis pod, but his mind soared through streams of data. The Sentinel AI's vast knowledge merged with his human intuition, revealing hidden patterns in the precursor defense network. Dr. Chong gasped as new readings flooded her monitors. "Admiral," she called out, "something's happening with Vega." Harrison turned to see holographic displays materializing around Vega's pod. They showed massive structures rising from Earth's polar regions, colossal energy collectors tapping into the planet's magnetosphere. The command center shook as the global defense network surged to life. Weapon systems long dormant hummed with power, while a shimmering energy field enveloped the planet, far stronger than before. In low Earth orbit, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov worked tirelessly, their fingers flying over holographic interfaces as they recalibrated the satellite network. The system processed terabytes of data each second, compiling a real-time map of the Void Herald Fleet's vulnerabilities. "There!" Rodriguez exclaimed, pointing to a fluctuation in the enemy's energy signatures. "They're command ships. The shielding isn't uniform. We've found a weakness." Volkov nodded, already transmitting the data to coalition forces. "Let's hope it's enough," he muttered. In the depths of the Mariana Trench, Captain Leong watched in amazement as the precursor facility sprang to life around her. Vast chambers lit up, revealing rows upon rows of sleek, biomechanical drones. "All hands, prepare for drone deployment," she ordered. The facility rumbled as launch tubes opened, releasing a swarm of aquatic machines into the ocean. The drones rose through the water column with incredible speed, breaching the surface and taking to the skies. They formed intricate patterns in the atmosphere, creating a secondary defensive layer that tracked and intercepted incoming Void Herald craft with ruthless efficiency. As the battle raged across the solar system, coalition ships equipped with the new Void Herald energy disruptor moved into position. The prototype weapons hummed to life, emitting pulses of energy that seemed to distort the very fabric of space. Void Herald ships caught in the effect suddenly found their energy-based systems failing. Propulsion cut out, Weapons misfired, and shields flickered erratically. Coalition forces pressed their advantage, concentrating fire on the newly vulnerable targets. At the Kuiper Belt station, Major Steele stood before the gravity manipulation device, his hand hovering over the activation panel. The approaching Void Herald dreadnought filled the view screen, its hull filled with weapons. "Now or never," Steele muttered, slamming his palm down on the controls. The station shuddered as the device powered up, emitting waves of gravitational distortion that warped the space around the massive enemy ship. The dreadnought's hull began to fragment, great chunks of alien metal tearing away as localized singularities formed and collapsed. Its attack formation disintegrated, leaving the once unstoppable juggernaut vulnerable to the station's relentless barrage. As the reinforcement fleet from Alpha Centauri engaged the outer defenses, Admiral Harrison received the intelligence from Emperor Zach Thor. A smile crossed his face as he integrated the Void Herald communication protocols into the Coalition's battle plan. "All ships, prepare for Operation Trojan Horse," Harrison commanded. He watched as Coalition forces executed a series of precision strikes, using the enemy's own tactical data against them. Void Herald command ships found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, their strategies anticipated and countered before they could be implemented. The battle had shifted in the Coalition's favor, but the Void Herald's vast numbers and otherworldly technology still posed a formidable threat. As both sides regrouped, Admiral Harrison knew that this was just the beginning. The next phase of the conflict loomed, with the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hanging in the balance. On the alien world, George and Zephyr stood before a shimmering holographic display within the precursor ruins. The star map before them pulsed with points of light, each representing a potential precursor outpost or weapons cache. "This could change everything," George breathed, his eyes wide with the implications of their discovery. Zephyr nodded, already transmitting the data back to Earth. "Let's just hope we can reach them before the Void Heralds do." As the information raced across light years, the Human-Aegean Defense Coalition prepared for the next stage of their desperate struggle against the cosmic invaders. The battle for the solar system raged on, with neither side willing to concede defeat. As the Human-Aegean Defense Coalition prepared for the next stage of their desperate struggle, Admiral Harrison's eyes gleamed with newfound dedication. The intelligence gathered from Emperor Zach Thor's captured Void Herald vessel had provided them with a crucial advantage. "Execute Operation Shattered Sky," Harrison commanded, his voice firm and steady. Across the solar system, Coalition ships surged forward in a series of coordinated strikes. The newly deployed Void Herald energy disruptors hummed to life, emitting pulses of exotic energy that seemed to distort the very fabric of space-time around the enemy vessels. On the bridge of the Coalition flagship, Lieutenant Commander Chin watched in awe as the massive Void Herald command ships began to falter. Their once impenetrable shields flickered and died, leaving them vulnerable to the Coalition's relentless barrage. "Sir, the disruptors are working," Chun exclaimed, his fingers flying over the tactical display. "Enemy formations are breaking apart." Harrison nodded, his eyes fixed on the holographic battle map. "Press the advantage. Don't give them time to regroup." In the Kuiper Belt, Major Steele stood before the ancient control panel of the precursor station. His hand hovered over a pulsing blue crystal, its surface etched with alien glyphs. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, pressing his palm against the cool surface. The station shuddered, and for a heart-stopping moment, Steele feared he had made a catastrophic error. Then, with a low hum that quickly rose to a deafening roar, the station's hidden weaponry came to life. Across the outer solar system, long-dormant satellites awakened. Their surfaces shifted and reconfigured, revealing gleaming energy projectors that swiveled to target the approaching Void Herald reinforcements from Alpha Centauri. The space around Pluto lit up as dozens of energy beams lanced out, cutting through the void and striking the unsuspecting enemy fleet. Void Herald ships, caught completely off guard, erupted into balls of plasma and twisted metal. On Earth, Carlos Vega's body lay motionless in the stasis pod, but his mind soared through vast streams of data. The merged consciousness of man and machine delved deep into the precursor defense network, unlocking secrets hidden for millennia. Dr. Chong gasped as new alerts flooded her screens. "Admiral," she called out, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "You need to see this." Harrison turned to see holographic displays materializing around Vega's pod. They showed massive structures rising from the ocean floors, colossal energy conduits connecting the Mariana Trench facility with other precursor installations around the globe. The command center shook as the global defense network surged to life. Weapon systems long dormant hummed with power, while a shimmering energy field enveloped the planet, extending far beyond the atmosphere. On Mars, Dr. Reeves wiped the sweat from his brow as he examined the newly uncovered precursor device. Its crystalline structure pulsed with an inner light, defying conventional understanding of physics. "Tanaka, are you seeing these readings?" Reeves asked, his voice filled with excitement. Dr. Tanaka nodded, her eyes wide. "It's a quantum entanglement device. This could revolutionize our communication capabilities across the entire solar system." Within minutes, the device was integrated into the Coalition's command network. Suddenly, real-time coordination between all forces became possible, regardless of the vast distances separating them. Admiral Harrison felt a surge of hope as the tide of battle continued to turn in their favor. But he knew they needed a decisive blow to end this war once and for all. "Major Steele," he called out over the quantum comm link, "I have a mission for you. It's high risk, but it could win us this war." Steele's holographic image nodded grimly. "Whatever it takes, Admiral. What's the plan?" Harrison outlined the daring operation to infiltrate the massive void Herald Dreadnought. Steele listened intently, his mind already racing with tactical possibilities. "We'll use captured enemy shuttles to slip past their defenses," Harrison explained. "Your team will plant the prototype energy disruptor at the heart of the vessel. If we can take out their flagship, it could break their entire invasion force." Steele saluted. "Consider it done. Sir, we won't let you down." As Steele assembled his elite strike team, Emperor Zach Thor led the Nigerian fleet in a massive counteroffensive near Jupiter. The gas giant's swirling storms provided a dramatic backdrop to the fierce space battle that unfolded. Nigerian ships, their hulls gleaming with reverse-engineered precursor technology, darted between the lumbering void Herald vessels. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes crisscrossed the void, creating a deadly light show visible from Earth's telescopes. Back on Earth, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Volkov hunched over their consoles, poring over data from the Gobi Desert obelisk. Suddenly, Rodriguez sat bolt upright, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Alexei," she breathed, "look at this energy signature. It's coming from the sun itself." Volkov leaned in, his brow furrowed. "That's impossible, unless the precursors build a superweapon inside our star," Rodriguez finished, her voice barely above a whisper. As they rushed to inform Admiral Harrison of their discovery, long-range sensors lit up with new alerts. Strange energy signatures, unlike anything seen before, were detected approaching from the direction of Sirius. Harrison's face grew grim as he processed this new information. He turned to his communications officer. "Deploy scout ships to investigate. We need to know if this is friend or foe." As the Coalition forces pressed their advantage across the solar system, Major Steele's strike team approached the massive void Herald Dreadnought. Their captured shuttle slipped past the enemy's outer defenses, its hull vibrating with the tension of imminent combat. Steele checked his weapon one last time as the shuttle's airlock sealed against the Dreadnought's hull. "Remember," he said to his team, "our objective is the ship's power core. Plant the disruptor and get out. The fate of Earth depends on us." With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the airlock opened, and Steele led his team into the alien corridors of the Void Herald flagship. The battle for humanity's survival had entered its most critical phase, with victory balanced on a knife's edge. Steele took a deep breath, steadying himself for the perilous mission ahead. As the team moved silently through the alien corridors, a blinding flash of light erupted from the direction of Sirius, visible even through the dreadnought's viewport. Steele's comm unit crackled to life with an urgent message from Admiral Harrison. "Major, new contacts approaching fast. Stay on mission, but be prepared for anything." Steele acknowledged the order and pressed forward, his team moving with practiced efficiency through the labyrinthine structure of the Void Herald flagship. They encountered sporadic resistance, expertly neutralizing enemy combatants with precision strikes and stealth takedowns. Back on Earth, Admiral Harrison and the Defense Council watched with suspenseful pause as the mysterious energy signatures drived into a massive fleet of sleek, crystalline ships. Their design was unlike anything seen before, neither human, Nigean, nor Void Herald in origin. Suddenly, a familiar voice crackled over the communication channels, speaking in a language that was neither human nor Nigean. Harrison's eyes widened in recognition. "That's Zephyr," he exclaimed, turning to Dr. Chong. "Can we get a translation?" Before Chong could respond, the crystalline fleet answered Zephyr's transmission. The universal translators struggled to keep up, but the message became clear. These were the Luminari, an ancient race of energy beings who had once allied with the precursors against the Void Heralds. On the alien world where George and Zephyr had been exploring precursor ruins, Zephyr stood before a massive communication array, his body glowing with an otherworldly energy. George watched in awe as his adopted son served as a bridge between worlds, his unique heritage as both Nigean royalty and Earth-raised human allowing him to communicate with the Luminari. "They're here to help, Dad," Zephyr said, turning to George with a smile. "The Luminari remember their alliance with the precursors, and they've come to honor it." As the Luminari fleet engaged the Void Herald forces, the tide of battle shifted dramatically. Their advanced energy weapons tore through enemy ships with ease, while their shimmering shields deflected even the most powerful Void Herald attacks. Aboard the Void Herald dreadnought, Steele and his team fought their way to the central power core. The ship shuddered under the assault of Luminari weapons, giving them the cover they needed to reach their objective. "Charges set," Steele's demolitions expert reported, attaching the prototype energy disruptor to the pulsing alien technology. Steele nodded grimly. "Let's move. We've got 2 minutes before this thing goes live." As they retreated through the chaos of the failing dreadnought, the energy disruptor activated. A wave of exotic energy rippled through the ship, cascading out to affect the entire Void Herald fleet. Shields failed, weapons went dark, and propulsion systems sputtered and died. From his position on the Coalition flagship, Admiral Harrison watched in amazement as the once fearsome Void Herald armada drifted powerless in space. "All ships, press the advantage," he ordered, his voice filled with the promise of victory. As Coalition forces moved to disable or capture the Void Herald ships, Carlos Vega's consciousness surged through the Precursor defense network. His merged human and machine mind processed vast amounts of data, unlocking secrets hidden for millennia. Suddenly, Vega's eyes snapped open in his stasis pod, his voice echoing through the command center. "Admiral the Sun, it's not a weapon, it's a gateway." Dr. Chong rushed to interpret the flood of data pouring from Vega's neural link. Her eyes widened as she realized the implications. "Sir, the precursor device in the Sun isn't a superweapon. It's a massive teleportation system capable of moving entire star systems." Harrison's mind raced with the possibilities this presented. He turned to his tactical officer. "Contact the Luminari. I have a plan that could end this war once and for all." As the coalition forces coordinated with their new allies, drawing upon the full power of the precursor network, Major Steele and his team were extracted from the disabled Void Herald dreadnought. They watched from the safety of a coalition ship as Admiral Harrison's audacious plan unfolded. The sun began to pulse with energy, its corona flaring in patterns that defied natural law. Streams of exotic particles flowed from the luminary ships, interfacing with the ancient precursor technology hidden within Earth's star. All ships, brace for transit. Harrison's voice boomed across all channels. In a spectacular display of light and energy, the fabric of space-time itself seemed to fold. The entire solar system shimmered, as if seen through a heat haze. Then, in a moment that stretched perception to its limits, everything shifted. Stars streaked past at impossible speeds as the solar system traversed light years in mere moments. The Void Herald forces, caught off guard and with their ships disabled, vanished into the distance as Earth and its allies hurtled through the cosmos. When the disorienting journey ended, the solar system found itself in a distant, resource-rich area of the galaxy. The new stellar backdrop was unfamiliar, but long-range sensors quickly identified numerous dormant precursor outposts and potentially allied systems nearby. As the coalition fleet regrouped, Emperor Zach Thor's holographic image appeared on the bridge of Harrison's flagship. The Nigean leader's eyes gleamed with a mix of awe and respect. "Admiral Harrison," Zach Thor said, his voice solemn, "in light of Earth's pivotal role in our victory and this unprecedented feat of interstellar travel, the Nigean Empire formally recognizes humanity as a major galactic power." Harrison nodded, the weight of this new responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Thank you, Emperor. I believe we have much to discuss regarding our new place in the galaxy." As the immediate threat of the Void Heralds receded, the true scope of what they had accomplished began to dawn on the coalition forces. Earth had not only survived an invasion by a vastly superior foe, but had also catapulted itself into a position of interstellar importance. The Luminari representatives, their crystalline forms shimmering with internal light, approached Harrison and Zach Thor. In a gesture of friendship, they extended an offer to share their advanced technology and knowledge with both humanity and the Nigean Empire. As discussions of alliance and cooperation began, Harrison couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From the first encounter with the Nigeans to the desperate battle against the Void Heralds, humanity had faced challenge after challenge, emerging stronger each time. Now, as Earth took its first steps as a true spacefaring civilization, the future stretched out before them, filled with possibilities both exciting and daunting. The Luminari spoke of ancient threats still lurking in the dark between stars, of precursor technologies waiting to be rediscovered, and of entire civilizations yet to be contacted. Harrison turned his gaze to the unfamiliar constellations visible through the view screen, a mix of anticipation and drive in his eyes. The war might be over, but humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.